Day and good morning. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Land, Environment, Housing, Agriculture, Parks, and Infrastructure is called to order, and the time is now 8:30 a.m. Today's date is Friday, October 10, 2025. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on October 3, 2025, with a second notice provided on October 8, 2025. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This morning, the committee heard testimony on Bill number 133-38, an act to add a new section 66215, 66216, and 66217 to Article 2, Chapter 26, Title 21 of Guam Code Annotated, relative to authorizing the use of third-party assistance in the permit application reviews, to establish conditional approval for permit applications, and to cite this act as the Permit Applications Review and Conditional Approval Act of 2025. And this was introduced by Speaker Frank F. Blas. Also, we'll be hearing Bill number 150-38 LS, and this is an act to rezone lot number 5228-R4-R2-1 portion in the municipality of Barrigada from agriculture to the light industrial zone M1. And then finally, we will be hearing on Resolution 94-38 COR, and this is relative to expressing the sense of the MINA'TRENTAI LIHESLATURAN GUÅHAN that the Government of Guam, through the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority, prioritize the allocation of community block grant disaster recovery funds awarded to Guam, and to recommend that no less than 20% of such funds be dedicated to urgent repairs at the Guam Memorial Hospital, Guam Department of Education schools, and village facilities under the purview of the mayors, and to submit this resolution as part of their formal public input process required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and Renewal. Before we begin, I would like to go over the general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal interference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may request the removal from any member of LIHESLATURAN GUÅHAN who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 38th Guam Legislature standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in their removal. Now we'll proceed to hearing Bill number 133-38 COR, introduced by Speaker Frank F. Blas, Jr. Mr. Speaker, you can give your opening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker, and welcome to my colleagues. And I want to thank also former Speaker Therese Talai, who's also here today. Thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. Chair, Bill 133-38 COR is a bill that is a product of a commission that the legislature had permitted me to enact or to put together, which is the Business Policy Review Commission. And in those discussions, one of the primary concerns and one of the largest concerns was basically the procurement procedures that occur with the Government of Guam. And furthermore was the permitting processes that were required for businesses to either begin their work or to continue their work. And in that, one of the things that the discussions that was had was that the inordinate amount of time it took for the permitting process to be able to go through the government, that cost businesses huge amounts of funding, to the point where there were some businesses that had to basically stop what they were doing because the process was taking too long, and the costs associated with that delay was eating into the monies necessary to do the project, to do the work. So as a result of those conversations, this bill proposes basically some assistance, not just to the businesses, but to the government entities who require these applications and these permits, and it provides that these permits or this process has what we call a shot clock provision. In other words, the agency, the entity would have a certain period of time that they would need, to be able to process the applications and put out the permits, and that if it does not meet the timeline, which is in this case 90 days, the permit will then be conditionally or provisionally approved. However, the process for the permits and everything would still continue. And should through that process, the application will not be, or the permit will not be issued, then it can be retracted. However, there is also another provision where it provides the authorization for third-party assistance. There has been already practice in certain entities, in certain institutions, of allowing the businesses to provide assistance to the permitting entity by providing them the resources, the manpower resources necessary to complete and to the application process, and that these third-party providers would actually work in concert in coordination with the permitting entities, and the third party is actually paid for by the companies who are hiring who want to see the assistance of the third party entity. So that's what this is for, Mr. Speaker. I'm Mr. Chair, and I would permit and I would like to hear the testimony from those that are here to be able to speak to this. Before I do that, once again, I want to thank the members that are here to be able to provide testimony, as well as the conversations that permitted, that led to the creation of this bill through the Business Policy and Review Commission conversations, as well as the procurement conversations and summit that resulted as a result of those conversations. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and also welcome Senator Telahi for being with us this morning. If there's anyone who would like to testify on Bill number 133-38, I please kindly welcome you to the table so that you'll be able to provide your testimony. Yeah. I know there was several of you that wanted to come up, so we got enough seats for everyone, whoever would be. Good morning again, everyone. Just as you begin your testimony, to please state your name and where you're from so that we'll be able to keep that for record-keeping purposes, and we'll go ahead and start with the ladies first, as always. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Half-a-day Vice Speaker Ada, Speaker Blas, and Senator Telahi. I'm Desiree Lizama, President of the Guam Contractors Association. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 133-38, Permit Applications Review and Conditional Approval Act of 2025. The Guam Contractors Association supports this legislation with a few revisions as a meaningful step toward addressing the backlog in Guam's permit review process. I have a few general comments about the legislation. GCA members here today will be adding more information in their testimony. This bill represents an innovative approach to advancing construction projects while maintaining proper regulatory oversight. We believe that with thoughtful revisions, additional frameworks, and a funding mechanism for the agency, this legislation can be strengthened to better serve our community while ensuring safety, environmental protection, and agency support. The current permit review backlog is not merely an administrative inconvenience. It represents a significant barrier to economic development, housing availability, and infrastructure improvement in Guam. As the legislation correctly identifies, delays ranging from weeks to years result in increased project costs absorbed by applicants, delayed economic benefits to our community, and postponed solutions to our housing shortage. This bill introduces two complementary processes that addresses these challenges. One, third-party certification processes. This authorizes qualified third-party entities to assist in permit reviews that can significantly reduce the burden on understaffed regulatory agencies while maintaining professional standards. Conditional approval framework. This approval provision creates accountability and ensures that applications move forward in a timely manner, preventing projects from languishing indefinitely in a review process. While the GCA supports the bill, we believe revisions are necessary to ensure the legislation achieves its goals without compromising public safety, environmental protection, or agency funding. One, we recommend adding a funding mechanism to the agency if the applicant decides to follow the third-party certification route. Much like the automobile registration, a new fee can be established that could benefit the agency. And two, we recommend timelines and frameworks. The legislation is a little broad in its language. We recommend a few new definitions and procedures concerning permit due dates and who would qualify as a third-party certifier to ensure full regulatory compliance. We will be suggesting language to the committee about the above points soon. The Guam Contractors Association is determined to work in good faith with this committee and the regulatory agencies to refine this legislation and ensure its successful implementation. We want to be a part of the solution, and we believe that together we can create a permit review system that serves Guam's needs while protecting our community and environment. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Lizama, for your testimony. Sir, you can go ahead and proceed.
Good morning. I'm Mark Mamzars, the Vice President of Black Construction Corporation. Although this issue impacts Black, I'm not necessarily here to represent the company. Rather, I was asked by Guam Contractors Association to present an overview of the situation and impacts of Bill 133-38. I was first nominated to the Guam Contractors Board of Directors in 1986 and have remained active for the last 40 years. I have spoken to various legislative committees, perhaps 75 times under a variety of hats. The issues revolving around construction permits goes back decades. I recall meeting with Governor Joseph Atta in the early 90s. I remember the meeting because afterwards we sat and had a few beers in his office. The governor and his chief of staff were discussing how many senators should be in the legislature. The governor wanted 21 to assure diversity. His chief of staff, Mark Forbes, argued for 15 to allow the process to be expedited. Ultimately, after becoming Senator Forbes, he was able to reduce the number from 21 to 15. It was my baptism into how this body functions. I am here to speak to the need of the bill and not necessarily to the actual substance. I have watched hundreds of raw bills come before this body and be reshaped by this legislative body. I recognize the need for checks and balances, but I have often seen changes that make the original concept impossible to implement. The cost of the checks and balance often outweigh the benefits. All I ask is that this body remembers the purpose of this bill is to expedite the processing of permits through Guam Environmental Protection Agency. I just indicated I was only going to discuss an overview, but I think it's appropriate to know that in the past 5 years, Black has had 3 projects that were stuck at DEPA for more than 6 months. 90 to 120 days is not uncommon. We do have examples of the process taking 30 days. These delays are not during the actual design phase, but after 100% stamped drawings by professional architects and/or engineers are presented to GIPA. When there is a delay at GIPA, every part of the private sector is impacted. First, employees sit at home waiting for the project to start. There are losses and disruptions to the construction companies. Homeowners cannot move into new homes. New businesses cannot open their doors to the public, and the landlords cannot lease space. All of these issues impact the economy of Guam, often more than meets the eye. The next challenge is that GIPA is understaffed. Finding qualified staff is a challenge. GIPA is challenged by the limitations of GovGuam pay scales. In fiscal 2024, the head of GIPA base pay was $97,000. Black has 6 to 8 environmental staff, with the head being paid more than $150,000. Black has around 60 employees that are paid more than the director of GIPA. At the professional level, GovGuam cannot compete with the private sector. Just think about it. $600,000 a year for professional contracts with doctors at GMH. Each project is different and its needs are different. The concept is to develop a method to accelerate the review process. The cost of paying the private sector wages to expedite projects is often less than the impacts of the delays. By allowing the projects to utilize third-party resources, it should reduce the burden of all contractors working with GIPA. The impact of delays will only increase the cost of doing business outside the fence. Over the past 4 or 5 years, the construction industry has been devoted to Camp Blas. There are 2 major causes for this concentration of the industry. First, risk associated with military construction is significantly lower. One of the primary factors is that the federal government pays within 14 days of the invoice. Contractors are required by federal law to pay their employees weekly. Carrying an extra 2 to 6 weeks of payroll is a huge burden on many construction companies. The other factor is labor. There are clear regulations for obtaining H-2Bs. Technically, the rules for inside the fence and outside the fence are the same. The sticking point is that contractors must demonstrate the requirement is associated with the military activities. Inside the fence, a construction contract with the Navy fulfills this requirement. Outside the fence, demonstrating this relationship is much more difficult, especially for private sector projects. I will divert from Bill 133-38. The industry needs the assistance of GovGuam to support the need for projects outside the fence. A report from an agency such as GITA that describes the impacts Camp Blas would assist smaller contractors in justifying projects that are related to the buildup. It was recognized in the original Camp Blas EIS that the impacts outside the fence were all-encompassing. Many small contractors do not know how to explain how a single home is needed to support the buildup. As we all know, we need to build thousands of homes to support the buildup. There are 3 major factors that have made the requirements outside the fence imperative. The first is normal rehab and maintenance. Guam Memorial Hospital is not the only structure on Guam that has outlived its useful life. The emphasis on Camp Blas has created a huge backlog of rehab and maintenance of infrastructure and buildings outside the fence. The second is the growth of the military. The addition of 10,000 people will require new commercial space, warehouse space, and other support services. Finally, Guam has had an existing Guam already has an existing housing shortfall, yet alone adding 4,000 to 5,000 units to support the growth in the military population. At some point, the work outside the fence will exceed military construction. These projects need to be expedited for the sake of the people of Guam. The Navy has some form of a memorandum of understanding with GIPA and inserted staff in GIPA to expedite the process. Unfortunately, from the industry's perspective, this has actually slowed the process, as it turned out to be another layer of bureaucracy. I would like to re-emphasize an earlier comment. All I ask of this body is to remember the purposes of the bill is to expedite the processing of permits through the Guam Environmental Protection Agency. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. We'll go ahead and go with the...
Good morning. My name is Matthew Hunter, and I serve as chairman of the Guam Contractors Association. On behalf of our members, I want to express our sincere appreciation for the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 133-38. The Guam Contractors Association strongly supports this legislation as a meaningful and necessary step towards addressing the long-standing and critical backlog in Guam's permit review process. This bill represents an innovative and practical approach to moving construction projects forward while preserving proper regulatory oversight. For too long, the permitting process has been plagued by delays that are not just inconvenient, they are crippling our island's progress. A process that should take 2 to 6 weeks is currently taking 12 to 18 months in many cases. This is simply unacceptable. The backlog in the permit review process is not a minor administrative issue. It's a major obstacle to economic development, housing availability, and infrastructure improvement across our island. And the legislation correctly identifies extended delays ranging from weeks to years have real and damaging impacts, including escalating project costs, which are ultimately borne by applicants, developers, and eventually the community. Delays in economic benefits, such as job creation, tax revenue, and community development. Postponed solutions to Guam's urgent housing shortage, which affects residents at every level. While GCA supports the intent and objectives of Bill 133-38, we believe that targeted revisions will strengthen its effectiveness and ensure that it achieves its goals while without compromising public safety, environmental protection, or agency funding. Specifically, we would recommend that the bill establish clear timelines and procedural frameworks to create accountability and predictability in the permitting process. Provide more precise definitions and criteria, particularly around permit due dates and the qualifications of third-party reviewers, to ensure consistent standards and regulatory compliance. We will be submitting suggested language to the committee to address these points and to help refine the legislation. The Guam Contractors Association is committed to working in good faith with the legislature, regulatory agencies, and other stakeholders to ensure this bill is thoughtfully implemented. Our goal is not only to support this legislation, but to be part of the solution by working together. We can create a modern, efficient, and accountable permit review system that serves the needs of our island, stimulates economic growth, and protects our community and environment. Thank you for your time and attention and leadership on this critical issue. We appreciate your efforts to address and challenge the effects every sector of our island's economy and every member of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony this morning. We'll go ahead and proceed now with the...
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, Madam Senator. I thank you for the opportunity to provide my testimony in support of Bill 133-38, 38 COR, the Permit Applications Review and Conditional Approval for 2025. This proposed legislation aims to resolve persistent concerns.
Can you go ahead and state your name and where you're from for the record?
I thought I did
no
that.
problem.
Joseph Ariola, contractor. This proposed legislation aims to resolve persistent concerns voiced by residents, business owners, and contractors throughout Guam regarding administrative delays that hinder progress, restrict innovation, and undermine trust in public institutions. Permit review should be completed within several days or weeks. Frequently, it extends over several months, sometimes even up to a year or beyond. Inadequate feedback and insufficient accountability often compound such delays. To summarize the key provisions of Bill 133-38, authorization of qualified third-party reviewers to assist agencies, thereby expediting backlog reduction while maintaining regulatory compliance. Introduction of conditional approvals, enabling applicants to continue addressing minor outstanding issues while progressing with their plans. This bill represents more than a procedural change. It signifies a pivotal cultural shift towards responsiveness and reform. To further strengthen this initiative, additional measures should be considered, requiring agencies to publicly disclose average permit processing times and establishing a dashboard to track approvals, delays, and third-party review usage would promote both transparency and efficiency. Excessive delays, such as small businesses waiting 6 months or longer for permits, reflect deep-seated inefficiencies and inequitable practices. When families confront administrative obstacles that suspend construction projects, it points not only to bureaucratic inertia, but also to unfulfilled commitments. The passage of this legislation would be instrumental in remedying these issues, and I urge its adoption, accompanied by robust provisions for transparency and timeliness. Guam must aspire to be a jurisdiction where permit processes facilitate rather than obstruct progress, ensuring transparency as the rule, not the exception. Interagency sign-off. Multiple agencies, including but not limited to DPW, Guam EPA, Guam Fire Department, village mayors, Highways Division, Land Management, and the State Historical Preservation. They all require approval. Delays in any individual office can stall the entire process. The absence of digital tracking and transparency. Applicants frequently report uncertainty regarding the status or next steps of their application. The lack of a centralized dashboard allows delays to persist unnoticed for extended periods. Staffing shortages and backlogs. Agencies such as DPW and Guam EPA routinely experience limited staffing, resulting in lengthy review queues. Manual systems and paperwork, dependence on physical documents and in-person routing slows operations and increases the likelihood of lost file or miscommunication, which has happened. Okay. For instance, securing a building permit for a 2-story single-family residence in Meleso took approximately 1 year to obtain final approval. This protracted process caused considerable uncertainty for the owners. As the contractor of record, we are held responsible when clients grow frustrated with such delays. Recommendations: central digital permit system. Okay, and I'm going to skip over this other one. The enable third-party technical review authorizes certified engineers or architects for code and structural assessment and accelerate processing and reduce agency backlogs. We need to facilitate interagency coordination, allow concurrent reviews across agencies, assign permit coordinators to oversee applications, and resolve the bottlenecks. Publish regular transparency reports, monthly updates on timelines, performance metrics, and backlogs. Standardized agency requirements establish a unified checklist to simplify processes and eliminate redundancy. Empower mayors with defined timelines. Mandate mayoral reviews within 15 business days. Escalate unresolved cases back to DPW. Permitting sequence. Sequential order is required, such as obtaining Department of Land Management clearance before technical divisions at DPW can begin their review. This contributes to bottlenecks in the permitting process. I would like to show the permitting process. Here we have the first page is we fill this out, we the contractor. Very simple, we can do it in about 5 minutes or even less. Right? On the second page, bottom of the page, is where all the agencies that we have to go through, okay? Some agencies would not entertain you until you finish a certain agency. Highways Division will not entertain you unless you go to land management, okay? So that process in between, we would leave it at, say, for instance, at land management or Highways Division, and it stays there for a while. We call, we check, it's not ready. It's not their fault, okay? We're not blaming the individuals, not here. It's the system that we have. Thereafter, this top portion here goes back to DPW engineering. They will not entertain us until all of this is filled. Okay? That process takes a while. One of the longest one, and again, I'm not blaming the individuals, but we do have a problem with the EPA, and I think the problem with EPA is lack of manpower. It's not the process. They try, they do their best to do what, to expedite the process. Okay, so this is the process we have to go through. The last one we did, it took a year before we even got it back and before we even got the permit. Okay. We got hell for that. All right, so. All right, so let's clear the air. It is important to acknowledge the dedication and professionalism exhibited by agency personnel. Delays are rarely the result of individual shortcomings. Instead, they often stem from systemic challenges, insufficient staffing, and operational inefficiencies inherent in the front lines. Conditional approvals and third-party reviews, such as provided in Bill 138-COR, present viable solution to the systemic deficiencies if enacted. Thank you for the opportunity, and I kindly urge and request that we pass this bill.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. I also like to welcome the Vice Chair of the committee, Senator Chris Dueñas. Thank you, Senator, for being here. Sir, you can go ahead and proceed with testimony. Don't forget to
state your name
and where you come from.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Roberto. I come on two parts, but at the same time, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker Anthony Ada, Speaker Frank Blas, Senator, former Chair Therese Terlahi, and Vice Chair Christopher M. Dueñas. Mananasi Tuus. Si Joe Roberto. I grew up on a farm down in Ipen, and I have no additional education other than going to GCC, graduating from there with on welding. But I've learned a lot through the years, and I am currently the immediate past chair for the Guam Contractors Association, and working with a great bunch of guys, men and women in the organization, and it allowed me the opportunity to meet a lot of people. Now, I'm here on a personal note because what Mr. Arreola just shared, I tried in 2016, almost 10 years ago. I bought a piece of property and wanting to build a house on it. And because of what I've learned, and I'm trying to do this on my own, learning. I was a member of the GCA asking a lot of questions. So I go to DPW and I see that same form he just shared. And I'm like, OMG, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I do this? Oh yeah, no problem. Just fill out your name, this and that. And I said, okay. not so bad. And then I started the process, and I work full-time. I have, at that time, 4 kids in school, and my wife also works. So you're doing this when you can. I'm not a contractor where that's my profession. I do it every single day, and I do it when I can. So time goes by, I bought the piece of property, trying to pay it down, and I'm learning this. I'm going through the different departments, and then, like what Ms. Ariela had just shared, I had to go to step 1, 2, 3, and then along the way, as a person trying to build this house, I run into these stumbling blocks. And at that time, it was SHPO. And even though I knew some people, I'm asking, man, what's going on? And I go, what are you talking about, butterflies and snails and this and that? I'm trying to build a house. And then it was such a learning experience. And I said, okay, let's set the appointment to go there. So months later, finally, I get an inspector to go see the property. And then he looks down on the ground, and we're about maybe 20 feet away from Route 4. And he looks down and he goes, man, Mr. Roberto, I think I see an ancient stream here. And I said, are you kidding me? An ancient stream? I see trash, I see tin, I see that house over there, but I could spit at it. And then 5 other houses over here, I see the remnants of the contractors throwing their stuff here, or the property owners, whoever. But I see all these bottles and cans that I got to clean up now. And it's just, and you see an ancient stream? I said, this is not right. So at the time, Mark Joseph, I sent emails, and I sent it to senators, I believe, and just trying to make a point here that I'm trying to build a house. Now, time goes by, and I'm going through this, and I give up. I said, honey, this is not happening. I need to step away. And then I cool down. Months later, going back to work, trying to make things happen, I go, okay, I'm going to start again. I go back to DPW, and I say, I filled out this application. Oh, no, Mr. Roberto, did you get a number? I said, what number are you talking about? And then they go, a permit number. I said, oh, so I could use the same one? Oh, yeah. And then I get it. I go back. Oh, sorry, you got to get past the SHPO. I said, no, I'm not getting past SHPO. I already did. And Mr. Roberto, I'm sorry, you got to go through there first. And I said, I got so frustrated. And at the time, my kids are getting older now. And I said, what's going on? And at that time, it was former Governor Gutierrez, and I forgot his attorney. You guys created some sort of a committee of sorts about the issue of SHPO and trying to move forward. And I went online and I complained. I said, I'm just a person trying to build a house. And this is going towards 2020. My daughter is about to graduate from her high school, and she adamantly wants to go to college, not here in Guam, but off island. And it came to a point where I'm having to save up so much money, work, save, work, save, work, save. And then it came to a point where, again, I gave up. I said, sorry, honey, we're not building that house there. And we need money to send our girl to college. So guess what? I had no choice but to do. I got stuck at SHPO. I sold the property. I sold the property that we wanted to build the house on and to send my daughter to school. So we did that. She goes to school, and thank you, Jesus, she finishes school. She just graduated this year with her master's in accountancy. Last year, she graduated with two, and I'm super proud of her, 2 majors, if that's what that's called, but accountancy and business finance. She did very, very well, and I'm glad because the investment paid off. She has her degree. Now she's working on her, this year, her CPA license, and I'm practically begging her to come back when she gets it And she goes, Dad, she shared a story of two of her friends wanting so desperately to come home, but they checked online and there's no way that the government can afford to pay them what they're worth. And so her two friends, and she's looking at me, she just sent me an email, my wife and I, 2 days ago, saying she's not coming home. And I'm proud of her for being on her own, because I told her after paying for college, sorry girl, you are, congratulations, you're awesome, you're on your own. Stop asking us for money, you're on your own. So they're all choosing not to come home, and I'm praying this is only temporary. Now, coming back to contractors, I'm starting up again. That lot I bought in 2016 was substantial. It's of size. I sold that lot. Now I said, honey, okay, we're going to start again. This is 9 years later. This time, I'm not going to deal with such stress and headache. I've saved up enough money, and I'm paying somebody else to deal with that right there, what you see there. And that person, I'm paying this person $7,000 so I don't have to deal with such stress. Then he tells me, this is all within 2 weeks' time, Joe, there's this thing called SWIP. There's this thing called ENOI. There's this thing called EPP. I said, yo, time out. Explain to me what those are. Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. Electronic Notice of Intent. Environmental Protection Plan. Total, and a biological survey. Total $20,500. And I'm like, oh, okay, bro, you know what? Okay. I'm just yesterday, I write a check for 10 grand, 50% of it to a professional engineering firm to get things started. This was just yesterday. And I told my wife, I said, okay, honey, we're diving down deep. Now, she goes, okay, so we're going to build that house. Now, the thing is the reason why is that now, because I sold that other property, the other lot that I have is at the base of the mountain, which is approximately 1,500 feet from Route 4. Guess what I, as the owner of the property, have to do? I have to put in the infrastructure, the road, I have to pay for all these engineers, so I'm getting all these costs, water, power, and I already got an estimate to build a nice, small home just for my wife and I, because our kids are gone. And the house is approximately $300 to $400 grand. The infrastructure, the road, everything is nearing 500 grand. So to build a $300,000 home, or let's say 350, is going to cost me 850 grand. Because of the infrastructure and road. And Senator, good morning. Sorry, I didn't recognize you earlier.
No worries. I didn't skip a beat. I've been listening to it on YouTube. So no need to help me catch up. I'm caught up. Thank you.
Thank you. So it really is a frustrating point with as much money as my wife and I earn. I could imagine for those that don't. And to hear the contractors, the issues they're having, and I was chairman and vice chair of the GCA. I'm hearing all of this, and in 2024, I attended a conference where one of the commanders had mentioned sorry but not sorry, because the labor pool of professionals are so limited that they are going to have to start competing for the same people. And how do you do that? With pay. You pay them more, and they'll show up. The contractor, I was fortunate enough to have built another house, and this contractor started out with 60 people with 3 project managers. He was doing very well. He almost didn't finish that house. His 3 project managers were stolen. I shouldn't say stolen, but they were offered more to go to other contractors. And I applaud all the GCA contractors in the same room because they're all competitors. And they collectively competing in the same industry moving forward, and they're sharing ideas and information that really is helping their competitor. I mean, wow, that should be applauded all its own. But this is where, after years of learning, and I'm praying that this bill 133 can get the support that it really needs to move forward, and then learning the housing shortages, learning if people have land to have to build the road, to bring in their own water, to bring in the power, and they're just trying to save up for the house, and then the closing costs. I paid this, the clearing grading plan, by the way, another reputable firm. In 2021, I paid them $8,500 for a clearing and grading plan that was required by DPW. So I went there and I'm paying everyone since 2016, trying my best to do it. And here we are, 2025. I have not dug one single hole yet or scraped anything at all. And I spent to date $44,632.48. And I have not even started. The permit it's not done yet. Yesterday, I paid the deposit in hopes that firm can get the ball rolling. So as a farm boy from EPAN, please, I want to build that modest home, and it's at the base of the mountain, beautiful view. If you guys got the hookup, help a brother out. You know, I spoke to Michelle, and here's another issue. Michelle, God bless her. She's doing the best she can with what she has and who she has, and they're probably going to get stolen too. Now, when she mentioned, because of the size of the property I own, she goes, Joe, what's going to happen is we're going to assume that you're a developer. I said, I am not no developer. I own a tint shop. Me and my brother, I grew up on a farm. I'm not by no means a developer. Well, the way you have it designed, I go, well, that's because of the suggestions by the guys who did the clearing and grading plan, because of when I pass, my kids might want to do it, so you should just do it now. Okay. No, not knowing any better, I'm listening to the professionals. If you want to know about tint, ask me. I will share the truth. Now, these guys are thinking about the future. I'm just thinking about building a home. But because I took the advice of all the professionals that know what they're doing, now all these assumptions are coming into play. And I told Michelle, no, I'm not. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I'm going based on what is being provided to me and the advice. So I'm sharing with you, here's a rendering of what I'm going to do with that little home 1,500 feet away from Route 4. And I'm responsible. The government here forced me to sign. I was told by the surveyor I had to sign on the map that I am responsible for putting in access. If I did not sign that, then I wouldn't be able to get the map done. And I'm like, so you're having me sign this? He goes, no, Joe. The government is having you sign this, not me. This is a requirement. I said, so I should just sell everything and live right next to the road. That's basically what this is telling me. And this is all on a personal level. And I could imagine there's that saying, land rich, cash poor. Well, it's running out real quick before the one block is even bought. And I already told my wife we might have to make some adjustments. And she goes, what kind of adjustments on the house? I said, well, you're the one that wants that kitchen and that back kitchen because you want to barbecue outside while you look at the view. And I'm like, oh my God, so let's just build a hut. But we have to spend 500 grand on road, pavement, the street sign, the water, the power, dig it down, bedding sand. I'm learning a lot, quite a bit. Thank you, all the contractors, by the way. I've learned quite a bit. And I feel for all these contractors that have to deal with not just the process, but having to take care of their own staff at the same time, and then trying to complete a project on time. By the way, that contractor that built that house, for me, he no longer, he's on his own. He just has one backhoe and he's by himself. He lost approximately 60 people in staff. And I'm grateful that he did finish it. We signed a contract in 2019, and he finished it. We were able to move in 2019. 2020 pandemic happened. We moved in November of 2023. 3 years, 3.5 years later to finish one single home. And it took approximately 18 months, Mark, I feel your pain, this one guy to navigate through the permit process of having to call in, make an appointment, just to make an appointment, to physically go there. It really, I felt for the guy. Go ahead, Jun, just keep moving forward. Don't worry about the time. I'm not gonna hold you to that yet. So I excused him for the whole time of the permit process, which took approximately 18 months to complete before he was able to go onto the property and begin. And then that house, because the water, again, water, GWA, my contractor who at the time who had 3 certified plumbers, the contractor, or GWA told my contractor that he was not on the list to dig the easement side to lay the pipe, the water. You have to be on a list at GWA in order to run the water line. And I'm like, what list are you talking about? So here's my contractor. No, I'm sorry, you got to call. So I called Jessica Barry. Jessica, please, I need your help. We're trying to get water. And so we meet down there, my contractor, the rep from Barrett Plumbing, he looks at my contractor. There's the inspector. He looks at my contractor. Hey, can you do this? He goes, yeah. Okay, I'm going to hire him. I'm like, oh, you need to be on the list. And I'm like, so that was that. And then house was done, and then power. Because I needed a power pole because of the distance, even though my power pedestal was about 12 inches away from the easement, I needed to pay, but I got a good deal, so he says, $7,500 for a power pole. And because of the height difference, because of typhoons, whatever, now it has to be 45 foot poles, not 30 that we had. So on Roberto Road, GPA guys said, okay, but don't worry, Joe, we're going to give you a good deal. You're now discounted to $3,500. Wow. One pole, $3,500 is what I had to pay. The water I had to pay to get it on easement up to where my house is, about 100 feet away, almost $18,000. So power and water, just the house was right there, cost me over 20 grand just for power and water for a house that's right by the easement. Now, the power pole, now GPA saw that there was 5 poles going up Roberto Road. Oh, Mr. Roberto, sorry, but we're going to have to change all those poles too. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, time out. 3,200, 3,500, 30. They go, no. That one is going to be taken care of by GPA, but your pole you have to pay. And then I go, oh, by the way, since we're digging out, you know, you have all that excess material over there. Can we use it to help dig this hole? I'm like, go ahead. It's free. You don't have to pay for it, GPA. You know, so and I'm like, this is the frustrations of a homeowner trying to build a house. Between the contractor and the homeowner, almost 3.5 years later to move in. And granted, that was a time during the pandemic, and all of that was excused. And this is just one home. And please, it's yesterday I gave, and Mark, this is all recorded, and I'm grateful for that. It's October 10, 2025. I wonder, and I pray before God takes me, that I built that house on the hill. I hope I'm done. I apologize for being as personal as I am, but it's very real, and a lot of people are going through this, and I'm grateful for learning a lot. Now, if the government, you know, my daughter's an awesome girl. She's very smart, way smarter than her farm boy dad. So create the incentive to bring home our kids that took the time and they learn and they are now all professionals. Let's bring them home. They need homes too. And as far as that butterfly is concerned, you know what? Department of Ag, you know, help move those snails and butterflies elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying my property has it, but I'm just saying help, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberto, for your testimony this morning. I'm going to go ahead and open up the panel to my colleagues to ask questions or have any concerns and comments that they may make. And I'll start with Senator Terlahi. You go ahead and start.
Thank you for all your testimony today. And I hear you. I think, Joe, you can agree that some of the issues that you brought up, especially the very detailed points of the process, Mr. Arreola, that these are the exact things that were supposed to be solved by this digital platform that they promised us years ago. And we waited in good faith for that and hoped that that would resolve at least the transparency, the interagency interactions, the notice to the, you know, the customers, what's the issue, and so that there's no misunderstanding as to who's waiting for what and exactly what it is that they need to comply. So I agree with you. I think the last I heard, I think we've heard this in different conferences as well, they still promise that it's under procurement again. They had to start all over again. But so I don't really know the status. That's a different branch. But I hear you, and I really have, I support this idea that if regulatory agencies need to hire contractors to help them, that be allowed. But as you say, EPA, they're understaffed. That's probably a funding problem. They've been completely defunded, right, according to the big, beautiful bill. So I'm not sure the status of how that's going to work. And that's, I think, one of the things we're going to have to work out. So how do we do that in where they're unable at this time to get personnel, they're underfunded, and they would need the same type of funds to get contractors to assist them. But the idea I support, I think one of the first things I did when I became a senator was to, you know, because of these delays, was extend the permit viability, right? Like by, I think, at least a year or two, so that when it took you so long to get your permit, finally, you had a little bit more time to use it before it expired and you had to start all over again. But yeah, I just have a couple of questions with the bill as to this conditional permit and the conditional approval. And I think there would be times when it's really not just from a shortage of personnel or a processing reason that these are delayed. It's probably because of things like they are investigating whether there's some kind of endangered species and that they just literally need more time to do that. I'm not sure. I wish EPA was here, because if that's really the issue, they could explain to us exactly what the delays are caused. Is it really lack of staff, or because the staff are trying to do too many things at one time? I'm not sure, right? But I can see that we need timelines. I can see that timelines are reasonable, but I just, this conditional approval, even if they have concerns, that's the only part. I'm hoping that the details coming from the Guam Contractors Association are going to help us to work those out. For example, on page 2, the 66216C says, conditional approval will remain valid for the duration of the permit, would normally be valid if fully approved, or until the review process is completed and all conditions are met for the final approval. So it sounds like it says it will remain valid until all conditions are met. And I think it should be maybe in that case the opposite, like only if conditions are met, or something. Like they can't have a conditional approval when EPA is telling you there's something wrong, right? Something, yes, Mr. Mark?
I think one of the things that you don't understand about conditional approvals, usually they are limited. So in other words, they may give you a conditional approval to do a grade, to do the grading and get started. So almost always on a conditional approval, you don't get the whole project done. They give you, okay, start here or do this or do that.
Yeah, maybe it's not that I don't understand, but the bill's written like that, yeah. Mr. Mark, that
I'm just saying,
conditional approval is, in this bill, very, very general, and it sounds like conditional approval for the whole permit, for permitting process.
I'm just trying to let you know that normally when you get a conditional permit.
Right, so if they do that, then that's not the issue, right? If EPA says you can move forward, you get a permit, this is the condition, right? Or GWA put in sewer, something like that.
Yeah, that's what they tell us
yeah,
to do.
Sure, but that's not what this bill, that's why I'm pointing out that this bill is very, very general, and it says conditional approval almost under any conditions if the timeline's not met, even despite EPA having concerns or somebody else having very practical concerns. So I just think we need to specify somehow what that might be or when that might change. And then in the next subsection, or in subsection E on the next page, it talks about if there are extenuating circumstances or uncontrollable factors that prevent an application from being reviewed. I agree, maybe that needs to be a little bit more defined. And it says that, I just want to know too, does the conditional approval extend through this period? This is an additional 90-day period as well. So just those types of things I think need to be finesse. And I'm glad that you were very specific as to where you think the delays are so that we can address those as well, because DPW was in here not too long ago. I don't know why they're not here today either, but they had said there are no delays on their end in the permits. Yes, Mr. Ariel.
If I just may add on, and I'm going to simplify it on the conditional approval. There are times that the architect may have missed drawings for fire alarms, smoke detectors, whether they're integrated or standalone. And we will be notified by DPW that, hey, we can't go any further until you update the drawings. So now we have to go back to the architect, the electrical engineer, update the drawings, resubmit. Okay? On a conditional approval, something as minor as that, they can go ahead and provide a conditional approval for permitting, because during or after the construction is done, we need to apply for a certificate of occupancy. Whereas now, the inspector will come there, he's got these new drawings, he goes, hey, you don't have the smoke detectors and fire alarms installed, not approved. But because of the condition, it'll say, well, go ahead and start. Go ahead and start, here's your thing. Just make sure you submit these drawings, okay? So that when we go for the final inspection, or whatever, even the electrical inspection, structural inspections, they can see that, okay, approved, let's move forward. That will help the process move along. rather than going back and forth.
Yes, I agree with you, and that, so, again, maybe that points out again that the bill is allowing this conditional approval on every level, even occupancy level, for example, without necessary evidence of compliance. So that's why I just think I agree with this concept. I think we just need to finesse it more, and I think it should be consistent with what you described. I think Guam Land Use Commission, we've seen that, where they take all the agency review kind of conditions that they recommend and sometimes say those are conditions of approval, approve of this, and then they wait to see in the end whether they comply, right? So I agree with you. I think that should be worked in, and that would be reasonable. So again, thank you all for your testimony. And you are expecting to submit additional testimony, Ms. Desiree? Ms. Lozama, you're saying?
Yes, at a later time.
Okay.
Probably Monday, by Tuesday.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you again.
Thank you, Senator Terlahi. Vice Chair of the committee, Senator Dueñas.
Mr. Vice Speaker and Chairman, I'm going to have to vote for this bill when it hits the floor, because otherwise, when my wife watches this hearing, she's saying, and I say, we're not building the retirement home, honey. She has a 2-year plan, but she might scrap it if this bill doesn't pass. I really appreciate the author, and this is definitely something that has to happen. When we had DPW here for their budget hearing, this issue came up. And the discussion was, if you have a plan that otherwise meets all of the conditions for clearance, you should not see any timeline beyond 60 days in terms of the approval. And they said that they can meet those timelines in terms of turning things around. We have gotten a number of calls and emails that dispute that. So I think the way I see this, and I wanted to ask the panel just this general question, because this is my observance of the bill. I'm sure there will be some markups and refinements, but do you see this as kind of switching the onus in terms of having to meet timelines whereby you now have a tool and an ability, through this law to say, hey, listen, this law allows us to move conditionally, and the onus now being on them, DPW, and the regulatory process to kind of speed up. Can I get some comments on that from the panel?
Thank you, Senator. And if you need a contractor, I'll give you my number later.
I'll take your card.
Yes, this bill would expedite the process. Going back to that 1-year process that we did for our house, once we signed the contract with the customer, we're locked in on the price, okay? And as time goes by, construction costs rises from rebars to ready-mix concrete to all kinds of stuff down at Home Depot. We just need to expedite and get it out to our customer and say, hey, I got your building permit, give me the deposit or whatever. We can start, okay? But any longer than that, we're locked into a price with the customer. We can't go back and say, well, we're gonna have to make changes. Sorry, we have a contract. You're gonna honor that contract. And it will help. It's not the be-all, end-all. I mean, digitizing everything would be the ideal, but this is a step in the right direction. Very, very much so.
Mark?
Yeah, I think part of what we see and envision is that obviously it's going to be a contractor's choice or an owner's choice about how to proceed. And we see by being able to involve third parties a little bit more and act a little bit more on behalf of the government to expedite it, that we can speed the process up, all right? And the concept I think any of us have is we got to pay for that third party. We fully acknowledge it, that if we want to spend more money to get it done quicker, hey, that's a decision as a contractor I need to make, you know, or else I can sit there and let it lollygag through the system. All right, and like Joe said, there are people who do this professionally, you know, and what we want to try and do is to be able to elevate that, and also using professionals, allow them to actually get a little closer to the decision process and actually being able to validate. I mean, I gave a quick example. I told you about how the Navy, and I've never seen the memorandum of agreement, I just know it exists, between the Navy and GIPA. All right, there's something. The memorandum of understanding was so they could insert a couple of engineers into GIPA. All right. As it turned out, from our point of view, it's actually slowed things down because it just created another level of bureaucracy. So first we had to get it past the new Navy people, who then gave it to the GIPA people and took the same time with GIPA people just about, because they were looking at it all anyways. So we want to take some of that review and quasi-privatize it, you know, to be able to expedite it. I think that's really the gist of what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to make it move faster. And believe me, GIPA's not the worst. I can tell you. Fish and Wildlife, those are the guys that you really have fun with. We have a $150 million project down at FINA that's been stopped now for 5 months. And we don't see anything in sight because Fish and Wildlife isn't working right now. So hasn't helped us. But it stopped completely. And the reason it stopped was one of Black's environmental people looked up in a tree and saw these little orchids. And they need to be moved. Now, Black's moved them on 2 other projects. We've actually moved the orchids. But we're waiting for Fish and Wildlife to come up with the plan as to what we're supposed to do with these orchids. And so the project is stopped dead in the water. I've got daily cost on it running me about $18,000 a day because of all the engineers and stuff. There's a big project, so, you know, and all we can do is twiddle our thumbs and try and figure out what to do with these people, what to do with these engineers, you know. So, as I say, GIPA's not the only nightmare, but, you know, we face many of them. And I give credit to the Navy and Fish and Wildlife. They've spent a bundle. We had a change order on the machine gun range where we had to do some rearranging of some of the boulders on the backside. And now, he talked about butterflies. Well, this has become, we created a butterfly habitat. Right now, Black is trying to grow about 750 cycads so that they can be replanted. It's part of our job. We're also the one tree that was up by the machine gun range that's died. It got killed in Mawar. It got chopped in half, basically. But we're growing about 25 or 30 seedlings. This is Black growing it, not the government, not UOG, not ag. We have to do it to support the Navy and try and get this done. So, you know, there's a lot of effort to stay in compliance and a lot of money being spent. I think we had a change order with the Navy on the breakwater. And it's about $6 million to move corals. All right? So I think things are being done properly. It's just sometimes it gets to be a challenge to comply with everything. And, you know, hopefully we can move forward. You know, I really worry that 5 years from now, and believe me, Camp Blas was a massive project. There's a lot of work and a lot of labor and everything else up there. But I honestly believe that 4 or 5 years from now, that amount of activity needs to be done outside the fence. You know, and how are we going to get that kind of activity outside the fence? The Navy has thrown a lot of resources at it, a tremendous amount of resources. But how do we get it? I mean, I remember when we built Tuman in the 90s, from about 89 to 91. I mean, it was massive undertaking, you know, and we had Leo Pellis going on too, in the industry, as you talk about the industry. It was massive, and we had problems like this as well. So I'm just trying to think forward, you know, how do we accomplish what needs to be done in a timely manner? And it needs to be done. We're short. Housing is ridiculously short right now. And you heard what it takes to get a single house approved. You know, and I spoke about Gita or somebody trying to help us come up with an explanation that every house helps us better support the military, because it just takes one more house away from the shortage. You know, but there's going to be 4 or 5 years from now, and I say that kind of long, it takes a while for a project to develop, all right? I mean, the design phase, what you're hearing from us primarily is after we've completed the design stage, after we've already spent a year trying to get ready, then we gotta wait another year. And that, 3 or 4 years from now, is going to be a real challenge for this island. And that's what I think we're trying to, you know, we could use it right now, don't get me wrong, but at that point, I'm not sure what we're gonna be able to do.
One of the best investments I ever made when I built my first house was hiring a consultant that took me through the entire phase from the foundation to the occupancy. And like you were saying, Mr. Areola, the fundamentals that happen when you complete the project, most of the time you're going to have changes and you get an as-built plan. And that's why the conditional use through the process, whatever was not discovered in terms of maybe some errors in the drawing and the like, and get fixed as they go. And then when you present to the for the final inspection, you've got your as-built plan, and that's basically the same thing. Joe, I feel for you, man. I think this is just natural, but I know why you don't have any more hair after hearing your story, my friend. So, you know, I think the result of this, and I think through the process, what we're going to find, and I thank you, Mark, for that explanation, because, and all of the contractors that are here. Hopefully what we arrive at, like you've discussed, is mitigation is mitigation. It has to happen because of the regulatory process, but it shouldn't be impossible, right? And hopefully what we come forward with now is the best practices, like you've discussed, to where, because I'm thinking probably these consultants are gonna use AI or something to overlay, you know, what is the regulatory process for Guam? No, seriously. And knowing that, boom, this project is here, it's gonna hit this. Boom, this project's here, it's gonna find snails, orchids, you know what I mean, whatever else, possibility, right, co-located. And like you said, Mark, you're right. I mean, if there's anything we can look at as silver lining for the buildup is all of the mitigation that happened in terms of transposing that outside the fence to be able to say, we know we're gonna run into these things, but instead of having this merry-go-round and circus, you know, with the regulatory agencies, it's gonna pop up, you're already gonna know, and you can build in the mitigation through the conditional use and saying, hey, I'm sure, Mark, probably you're able to, if it worked for you, you could be building where the orchids weren't, or doing whatever site work you were doing there, and not just stop the whole project altogether, and then when you get to that area, you know, do that mitigation. So I hope that's what we end up with here with this tool, is an understanding that this is not a method to bypass the process. This is a method to build in efficiency to where you know you're going to have the problem already, and how to mitigate it, including the utilities. Because, Mr. Roberto, what's supposed to happen is when you bring in utilities and you're the one bringing it in, it's supposed to backtrack to you because of the fact that you've put in the infrastructure leading in, meaning the property owners in the front now, as they come online, should start building in that efficiency for the investment that was put in.
I do have a comment on that. I was told 7 years.
Yeah.
If they build after 7 years, it doesn't apply.
Yeah. So your neighbors are going, man.
SOL.
I can't do the permit until they count down the years. Go ahead, Mr. Ariola.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Telo, in your concern about the conditional use or approval, I do not think any engineer in the Department of Public Works will approve anything that may have a structural integrity issue. Okay, if there's an issue with the structural calculations, as an engineer, I would not give you a conditional approval. I think most of that would be the minor stuff that can be corrected as we go along, and it will not compromise the structural integrity, the electrical system, the fire suppression system, whatever we call that. I do not believe any engineer, when it comes to the final approval, that they will give that conditional approval. So I think that may cover that a little bit.
May I respond to that, Mr. Chair? Just real.
Yes, Senator.
Situs Masi. Yes, I agree with you. However, the bill is very clear that this conditional approval that the bill will grant is blanket. In 90 days, if there's nothing from the agency, it's conditionally approved, meaning it's approved pending final real approval. And so they're not even able to put any of those conditions in at that time. It's just approval, like a default approval is what it's calling for. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
And thank you, Mr. Ariel.
Vice Chair, you can go ahead and
Sure, I'll just wrap it up. Absolutely. Yeah, so while I see that, I think what's going to happen here is the onus is going to be on the contractor and the owner. They're going to have to make sure their project is going to pass muster and be engineered properly and the like. Otherwise, the conditional is not going to be of any benefit to them. They're going to have a project that can't be certified and can't be given occupancy. So I think the onus is on the private side of the house here, where this conditional will be put forward. But the bottom line is those doing that under conditional, you're going to know that you better have your stuff together, because otherwise, you're going to put out hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to be able to sit in your car and appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Senator Taitague, you're recognized, ma'am. Do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to my colleagues. And of course, good morning to everyone here. Thank you so much for coming and testifying. I'm sorry I'm a little late, but I was listening on YouTube as I was trying to multitask. You mentioned earlier, Desiree, right, that you'll provide testimony later on with some changes. Did you mention any real changes, substantial ones that we can start looking into?
Thank you, Senator. So right now we're in the process of collecting third-party certification examples from like the mainland or other international jurisdictions. So we're working on it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of similar to a bill that we recently passed in 125. Even Bill 125 was giving conditional use for rental units to go through. It's kind of similar with regards to the certification of those third parties, the requirements they have. So it's something maybe when you're putting your testimony together for recommendations to have a chance to look at that, the findings on that particular bill. And I'm sure we'll be happy to help if you need some more information. But, I do support the concept of this. We all know that our labor force is dwindling. We're finding out that more people are retiring. That's the biggest issue. The only thing we got going for ourselves at this time is technology. And it's coming in fast, but we need that next generation to come in and implement it, and how we can streamline the process without the additional hiring of individuals, because that's what we're dealing with right now. I did notice that during your testimony, Mr. Hunter, right? Okay, you were talking about targeted revisions Can you give me an example of some of those? I mean, you did give examples in your testimony, but can you just kind of define it a little bit more on what you mean by, because targeted visions is like massive, but what is the main targeted vision that you would like to see implemented first? I mean, the number one.
So we've done a lot of discussion on this, and we're compiling some suggestions for the speaker. One of them would be allowing professional registered engineers to be involved in this approval process. They're already involved in the project. When they stamp the set of drawings and put their signature on it, they're already accepting liability for that based on their rules and regulations and how all their registration process is. So that's another good way of...
Okay, and actually that comes to my next question, because in the bill, it requires these rules and regulations to be proffered according to the bill. Regulatory agencies shall establish guidelines and procedures, but it doesn't give a timeline, you know, for them to do these guidelines and procedures. And I think, Mr. Chair, if I can, you know, in any kind of amendment, that we need to put their feet to the fire, you know, and require a timeline in which they need to have these rules and regulations. And I would like to see, I don't know if we can do that, but also have in these, well, if you do these guidelines and rules and regulations, to ensure that we have the industry, private industry, be there to provide their input and insight into it. So I don't see DPW here, and they're probably one of the biggest hurdles that we all come about, but nothing more than EPA, because every contractor that I've dealt with and talked to me about their issues is all from EPA. It talked about that. And I know Mark, you brought that up, you know, in your testimony about how it's very difficult to find, you know, environmental specialists actually in that field to be able to staff EPA to provide them that input. And it is very difficult. But again, you know, until we start pushing into technology to assist them, it's going to be another roadblock. But if we can find a third party, you know, private sector that they have, I mean, look what it said here, that EPA in exchange by limitations of government of Guam pay scales, okay, FYI, head of EPA base, okay, it talks about the funds, right? But Black has around 60 employees that are paid more than the director of EPA, but it also talks about how Black Construction has about 60 employees that are paid more than EPA at a professional level who have Black has 6 to 8, sorry, my bad. Wear the glasses, Telo. 6 to 8 environmental staff, just at Black alone. You know, the question is, well, if you guys have, you know, that many there, then are they able to subcontract to the government of Guam when it comes to some of these projects? If the third party, if this bill goes through, you know, they're going to need a third party, a private sector to come in to speed up the process. So will Black Construction allow these to actually be able to, these individuals to subcontract?
I don't think that's the intention, okay? We do hire outside consultants as well for the environmental issues. I can think of EA, which is a national firm that does a lot of it for us in the government. I can think of, there's 3 or 4 Dueñas.
So these 6 to 8 environmental staff?
That's to make sure we build it according to the rules.
Sorry?
That's to make sure we build it according to the rules. Okay. And to make sure that we're taking care of the environment. And ironically, as I spoke a little earlier about the orchids down in FINA, it was our environmentalist people who stopped the job. Oh. I kind of want to go, It wasn't the government. So internally, our own controls of trying to make sure the job follows the requirements, we caught it. The government didn't catch it. Now we have to wait for the government to come up with a plan, the federal government, National Fish and Wildlife. Right. And we twist, you know, we twist in the wind right now. But our people are there more, we have to watch for bats. We got to watch for birds. We got to watch for turtles. We move coral. We're going to have to move some seagrass. The federal government on the CITEs that we're dealing with have probably spent $3 million. As I forget the name of the tree. We've got about 25 of the tree seedlings we're working on to try and get them far enough along so somebody else can plant them where they want to plant them. But that's in our contract. So when it comes to these environmental things and making sure that we have silt lines up and everything else, that's why we have environmentalists, is to make sure we comply.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. I mean, we're just a 38-mile island. If we start, messing with our environment here, everyone's going to pack up and leave. I appreciate what Black's doing and having that many environmentals and complying with the law, because we have some things that we have to protect on this island, and we have to keep it going. So I appreciate that. But I do know that, as mentioned, I think Mr. Roberto, you mentioned how you had a friend many years ago with as a contractor, and now he's the only man left in his company. It's because the military is taking up all our workforce and bringing them in, so it makes it also difficult. I was wondering if Mr. Chair had an opportunity also to bring in the SHPO for testimony, ask them for their testimony as well.
Yeah, definitely. We did invite the regulatory agencies and
come, and they haven't shown. Next time we got to subpoena some of these guys, right? I mean, you're taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here, and you're losing money. They won't lose money if they come here. You guys do. So, maybe we should start subpoenaing these agencies to get answers so we can resolve this in a much quicker fashion like we're trying to do right now. We are in such a bad position. This military buildup, it's important. Don't get me wrong, it's very important, our protection. But it's also messing with our local, ability to provide homes for our family. And that's sad. And I'm so sorry about your children. Even my children have gone. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that they'll want to come back home to a beautiful paradise life. They want that calm and cool. And we got to protect this island so that they do have a home to come to when they want to come home. But other than that, looking forward to adding that speed tracking on the rules and regulations, and please be involved and keep in touch with the legislature on this this process, okay, specifically on this bill. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Taitague. I'll go ahead and go to the author of the legislation for any questions and comments that he may have.
Well, first off, thank you very much for being here today and for providing testimony on this thing. And I look forward to the targeted revisions or some of the recommended amendments to strengthen the bill. Again, this bill was a product of the conversations we had with you. And obviously, granted that there may be some areas that we could tighten up, but that's what this public hearing process is for. Appreciate, Mr. Roberto, you bringing out the personal touch to why this bill is important. But because it's more than just the money that the companies have to spend. It's the dreams that people are being denied of. Okay, of which I feel that this bill is important. So I look forward to the recommendations and of the revisions. It was purposeful to be able to keep it in generality so that we can have these conversations and recognize that we're not the subject matter experts here. You all are. And we want to encourage the collaboration between your industry and those entities, those agencies that require this permitting process or this application process to be able to bring you to the table to sit down. As was told, there were many things that have been promised before that if probably they were in place today, we wouldn't be sitting here and Joe would be inviting us to his house for the barbecue behind, the house, as we're watching, So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you very much, and I continue to work with you all in being able to approve the language in the bill, as well as with the committee to be able to put this out so that we can continue to assist, to help our industry, help our economy, and help our families. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And perhaps going off of the Speaker's comments, where we have some type of self-certification process, and then that can keep the process moving forward, and then regulatory agencies can still chime in. And I think the other part there is something where if there's changes, especially in construction, right, you have a design change or something that needs to be done, we want to make sure we place into the bill something that allows that process to happen even while we're in the conditional use. But we'll take all these into consideration and look at what we can do to have this legislation move forward. And we look forward to the markup hearing on this for the process and get it onto the next session if possible. You want to do any closings? Okay. With that said, we'll go ahead and have Bill 13338 COR publicly heard, and we thank you all here for your presence this morning and testimonies on the legislation. Thank you. We'll now proceed with hearing on testimony on Bill number 150-38 LS, and this is an act to rezone lot number 5228-R4-R2-1 portion in the municipality of Barrigada from agriculture to light industrial, and this is authored by Speaker Frank Blas. And if we have anyone that will be providing testimony, to please step forward to the table so we can get your testimony in. I'll go ahead and recognize Speaker Frank Blas for his opening statements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, you know, Mr. Chair, this bill is, I'll put it as simple as we please, okay? You have a lot 5228-R4-R2-1 that sits in the middle, literally in the middle of an area that is surrounded by lots that are zoned otherwise, commercial, whether it be commercial and industrial. This lot here is right now, if I'm correct, it's zoned right now as agricultural. It's an agricultural lot that sits between a quarry, a warehouse, a heavy equipment operations. And what this bill seeks to is just to, like the other lots within that area, to be able to rezone it so that the lot can be utilized as the same as the other lots that are in that area. Okay? If you know where this lot is at, it's basically an area where you really can't grow on it. Okay? You can grow a business on it, but you can't grow anything else on it. So that's what this bill is for. I appreciate the efforts that the lot owners have had to went through to be able to try. They did go through try going through the regular process. Coincidentally, it's almost like a deja vu of the previous testimony, in that these landowners, you know, have actually tried to get this lot rezoned and be able to utilize this lot for more than 5 years already. And so that's what this bill is for, and I look forward to the testimony that will be provided. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And sir, will you go ahead and state your name and where you're from and provide your testimony. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Speaker, and Senators present. My name is Glenn Makepeace. I'm the owner of the lot in question, and it is the best use of the land to go ahead and change the zoning to something that is more suitable, not only for the use of the land, but also, you know, for taxation. So it will better serve, you know, not just myself, you know, but also the community, you know, to be the lonesome agricultural lot, you know, completely surrounded by M1. What can one do in that small lot? So that is the reason, why I reached out, and I am very happy that the speaker was willing to introduce this bill. And I ask all of you, for your support, being that it is actually, the best use of the land, to give it, a zoning that is more appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. McPeace, for your testimony this morning. I'll go ahead and open up the panel to my colleagues if they have any questions or comments on this piece of legislation. Senator Lahi, you have any questions this morning, ma'am? Sure. I'll go ahead and start with the Vice Chair for the committee, Senator Dueñas.
Sir, I just have to ask the basic question. The speaker did mention that you have attempted the regulatory process. I used to be the director of Department of Land Management, and I got to use the term befuddled as to why the application process would not have moved smoothly on this, given the fact that the contiguous lots are already zoned that way. Can you explain the experience that you had to the committee?
It's a very lengthy process, that it was discouraging enough that I had to just drop the attempt.
Okay, but you did make the effort.
Yes, sir.
So you went through the application process and everything else to have
I started it, yes. I started it.
Okay. I mean, for me, I understand these issues very well. And like I said, I had signed off on a number of different property descriptions based on the presentation to the Guam Land Use Commission and everything else. Like I said, I'm a little surprised, but yet, given the facts laid out here, I don't have any real reservation. It is a little bit over between a half acre and kind of an acre. So can you just describe one more time the area where you are? What are some of the uses that are currently being used around this property?
At this moment, it's just basically used for storage of equipment.
Okay, so that's what the other landowners are doing with their properties?
The other owners, around the area, right in front of my lot is a residence. There are two houses, and they are M1, but nonetheless, they're using it for residence. And around me is a quarry, an active quarry, and across from it, there is a pesticide company, and there's also a heavy equipment parts store. And up on the hill, there is a construction company. So everything around the area has been industrialized, and that is just the one lot, that has not been yet, developed into anything else other than parking of equipment.
Yeah, we see a lot of this mixed use, particularly in Harmon. That's just the evolution of the area in Tituha, where at one time they were residential, but then things started popping up throughout. So it's not uncommon. And so I just have to ask one more question, sir, just to cover our bases. Are any of your neighbors not supporting this effort by yourself?
Actually, most of the area has been rezoned via legislative action.
Okay.
And everyone around, they prefer to have continuity of zoning rather than having, a mix of zoning. Because then if they want to do something, it will have, an impact on the lot that is not same as theirs.
Okay.
So actually for the best use and continuity also, rezoning it to M1, would be the best choice.
So those houses are on M1 as well. They knew the situation, or maybe they were there prior, no?
They were there when it was agricultural, and when everybody else was rezoning their properties, they decided to go ahead and just change their zoning as well, since it was being done already by someone else. So get on the bus and do the rezoning so that they can at least in the future not have to go ahead and go through the trouble by their own.
No, it makes sense. I mean, they can now repurpose it if they want to and build somewhere else, and now it can be, you know, used for office space or different things that supports the various activities around there. So I just wanted to go through this line of questioning, like I said, because I've experienced this firsthand, and I wanted to get the assurances that this is, you know, not only highest and best use, but you're going to be a good neighbor, continue to be a good neighbor, and it looks like your neighbors are already, in fact, if they took the effort to rezone theirs, knowing that it was a residential already, obviously, you know, they are, you know, akin to what the area is being used for. So I thank you for your testimony, and I don't see any problem with this. I just wish the regulatory process would have been expeditious for you, because I know that even with property, there are zone selections. When you have certain portion of your property that's already on your property, you can make a decision from time to time if enough of it is already. I've seen these in Tamuning and other places where a portion of the lot is one, and then the other is the other, so they can make the selection by going in and applying. This seems almost the same to me, although it's contiguous and not a portion of. That's what the law allows for already under general circumstances. So I don't see any problem with this, and we'll watch it go through the process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dueñas. Senator Terlahi, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you. There's no map on this bill. Can you just describe to us where this property's at?
It is road frontage, facing at the road that is called Alligator Street, coming down from the overpass, connecting over to Las Palmas development. So that main street, that's where the lot is located.
So you've got front of you're adjacent to the road?
Yes, ma'am.
And the description of the lot says portion. The other portion, what is it used for? This says -1 portion, and then?
Just the one lot, which is like 3/4 of an acre.
Okay, and then when you went to the Land Use Commission, so normally when you're there, they're going to notify the neighbors and see if there's any objections, and they're going to ask you what's the purpose of the rezoning. Did you state any purpose?
I get along very well with all my neighbors, and every one of them, you know, is in support, you know, of the change. At one time, you know, I did tell them that I wanted to use the property for the cultivation of medicinal marijuana. But as you know, the rules have not yet been approved, and the process was just taking too long, you know, so I was being left behind while everybody else, you know, has already moved on with the zone change, you know, to M1. So for the best use of the property and also for continuity, like I said, you know, it was best to go ahead and evolve like everybody else and become M1.
Do you have an intended use of the property? What do you intend to use it for?
I have an industrial license paper shredder machine, and that would be a nice place to put it at, you know, for shredding paper.
All right, and then, so I found another bill back in 2015, introduced by Senator Tina Muñoz-Barnes for the same lot. Is that for the same lot? And yes, it says it was heard by Senator Tom Atta. I'm looking at a news article. And at that time, Joe Borja from Land Management had said he wanted the bill to go through the regular process because he wanted the application review commission or committee where all the agencies take a look at it to look at it. He said that was his concern, bypassing the review process by eliminating the agencies involved, including the mayors. And while we think that this application will be approved through the normal zone application process, we believe it should go through the application review committee, just like all other applications for zone changes, most especially since the use of the land is going to be considerably higher than what it is currently zoned for. So I just want to make sure whether, when you did that, was there a problem in particular that you encountered that made it get delayed?
No, the director just wanted to make sure, you know, that his authority be utilized instead of bypassing it and going to the legislature. So that was, you know, his stand at that time.
Yeah, so when you went through the process at land management, so the bill never got approved back then, but then you went through land management afterward?
Yes.
And was there something in particular that stopped you at land management? What was there? Where did it get stuck?
When Mr. Borja, you know, told me straight to my face, you know, that this is going to take, you know, over a year. It will be, you know, a very lengthy process. Then I got discouraged. I already knew that it was not going to go ahead and go through, and it was best to just go ahead and leave it alone and come back at it later on.
All right. Well, that was in 2015 when that last bill was attempted?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So at that point, had you had any input from the mayor?
The mayor of Barrigada, actually, you know, a good friend of mine, you know, she is in support of the rezoning, and she has expressed, you know, her support.
All right. I guess, okay, well, thank you. And if you're approved for light industrial use, is it a potential use that would impact those who are residing in front of you?
Nothing will be impacted in any way, not in any negative way anyway.
Why do you say that?
Because if everything else is already M1 all around me, then all it's going to do is make things even better, especially even taxation. It would be more beneficial to me because I will have a little bit more flexibility to use the lot. And being that all the environmental impact has been conducted, you know, for all the other properties surrounding me. So I don't see any negative impact.
See, well, that's the thing. We don't know. We don't have those in front of us. We have nothing from the agency committee, and we have nothing from the Land Use Commission that shows that those studies had been done. They don't show us when the rezoning was done, whether there were any conditions put on those properties that were adjacent, especially because of the residential use that is right adjacent as well. I'm not sure. I wish that the Department of Land Management was here so he could just tell us straight out what were the conditions put on the adjacent properties, and is there some kind of, any kind of concern that we need to be addressing as well. In the event that we approve this rezoning, should we put the same conditions on your property versus the others? That would be one of my questions, Mr. Chair, from Land Management, as well as at what point of the process did this end? Did they get community input yet? Were the adjacent landowners notified? But otherwise, yeah, I see your concern if they're telling you it's going to take a long time. I'm curious though if that was back in 2015, and if you try it now, they would be giving you the same time frame, because they say they don't really have those type of delays over there at Land Management anymore. But thank you, Mr. Chair. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. Yes, the Department of Land Management was invited for the hearing again this morning as well. Senator Taitague, you're recognized, ma'am.
I'm telling you, Mr. Chair, we got to start subpoenaing these agencies, you know, to show up. You know, this is ridiculous. People take the time to come out here to testify. It's only fair that they show the same respect, you know, especially to the constituents who come here, you know, need answers. This is right next to the Fence Masters, right? Right before Fence Masters?
Pardon me?
The property is right before Fence Masters, right?
Correct.
So you're right next door to Fence Masters, right?
No, Fence Master is borrowing my property to park some of their stuff. They're good friends of mine.
And that piece of
they
property.
Are located, yeah. They are located, their office is located, a few feet away from me.
Oh, yeah. So that's your property that Fence Masters is on right now?
Yes,
okay, so they're renting from you on that.
It's more like a friendly handshake, where they can stay there, for a while.
Old school. Well, but that area where Fence Masters on, it is M1, correct?
Everything else around it except the lot, that I own.
So I'm wondering, when that was going on, well, why didn't you, when that was being M1, why didn't you get the rest of the property where your house is, that area nearby? Why didn't you get that one at the same time?
I was a medical corpsman in the Navy, and medicine is something that I enjoy. Yeah. And when the medicinal marijuana started to come around, I got excited. And so I just wanted to go ahead and use that lot, keep it as an agricultural lot, and go through the process. And I did. I went to to get all the permits, all the, not permits, but get all the clearances. And the last one that I needed was from Public Health. But Public Health would not issue anything, unless, all the regulations are approved and passed. Right. And since that has not happened, yeah, I, like many others, you
need to move on to the next adventure. Yeah, you can't be stagnant. Yeah, and it's been very slow with regards to that. We've been seeing it in the paper. I think recently something came up that, the one thing we were trying to do in the legislature a while back was to try and make sure all these zoning of property doesn't come here. It makes us look like we're doing favors for somebody, and we zone some and we don't zone others. It just doesn't look good unless it goes through the process. Now, you said earlier when the question was asked about you going through the process, you said, yes, you started it, but you didn't say you completed it. So how far did you get before you just gave up?
Practically just the application process.
Just the application, so?
Yeah, when I spoke with Mr. Borja in person, because I was also a realtor at that time, and he came to do a presentation, where we were having a realtor association meeting, and I spoke with him in person, and he told me this is going to be a lengthy time. And I said, like, months? And he said, over a year.
He said that?
Yes, ma'am.
Over a year? That's really pretentious of him to say something like that. That doesn't always happen, to be that long. I mean, there's even laws that the ARC review committee would have to review a certain amount of, approval within, 60 days. And so I don't understand why he would say it'd take a year. Is there any, okay, so all you did was do the application. So you didn't really go through the process. You just filled out the app. So you didn't go through the process.
Correct.
May I make a recommendation, as we go through the process here, which may take a couple months, itself. May I make the recommendation to fill out the application, go through the process, and if you have any issues that are taking longer that you think is an issue, then let us know. That's when we can step in and find out and call these agencies and ask them, why is it taking so long? What is the roadblock for you, to go through? You've already got the support. The biggest thing is having the support of your neighbors, because a sign is put up to ensure that, anybody has any complaints. Number one. Two, you have the mayor. You said the mayor is in full support of this. You might want to, seek the mayor from Dedido too, because they're, that area is kind of, I don't know where the border ends or it stops. What is Barrigada?
That lot.
Yeah. So, and at least have those testimonies from the surrounding areas along with the mayor, provided to this committee as well, with a map showing all those other surrounding areas, and then let's cover all angles, right? I'm not saying not to process through this scenario, which we try not to do. We put these boards in place for a reason, to vent and make sure that's environmentally protected as well as neighbors and there's no issues. So I ask if you could continue the process with the Guam Land Use Commission on rezoning, as well as providing testimony from your neighbors, surrounding area, and also with the mayor's office, and bring it to the body. That's going to be helpful. At least you got 2 avenues to try, you know, and I hope that one gets, you know, as soon as possible we can get one through, but we as senators need that support in front of us. You know, like Senator Lai said, you know, we don't have any documentation in front of us. And, but I do know the area very well. I've passed by there many, many times. And it is, you know, really, I always thought that it was M1, to tell you the truth. I didn't realize just a small segment wasn't. But then now I understand why you kept it agriculture. And now it's time to move on. So appreciate you being here. And I hope that you do, you know, at least continue the process. And if we see a roadblock, we'll do what we can to help. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And to your wife, thank you. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Senator Taitague. We'll go ahead and go back to the Senator Gumataotao. Do you have any questions or comments for the? I'd like to recognize Senator Gumataotao. Sorry.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here on this bill. I actually appreciated the comments from Senator Dueñas regarding this property and his experience in the land agencies in the executive branch. And I think as I look at it, the questions I had, for the most part, that Senator Dueñas was able to get that from you. So I do appreciate you coming down and providing that, because or else we'd have to repeat the whole thing, and I apologize for my tardiness. But at least in terms of when I did hear, again, thank you for coming down and providing your testimony on this bill. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gumataotao. And we'll go ahead and now go to the sponsor of the legislation, Speaker Blas, for any question, comments, and its closing.
Annie, thank you very much for being here today. And thank you for my colleagues for the questions and stuff, and I recognize the concerns. And we got some homework to do. But I think that with the homework, we'll be able to, you know, to show that, first off, the frustration, you know, that you as a landowner who wants to be able to use the property in conformance with everything else that's surrounded it. We're not asking for anything exceptional with this. But I do recognize that, you know, we cross our T's and dot our I's so that we can make sure that we can answer all the questions, and we'll be able to do that. Okay? So I'll continue to work with you and, you know, along with my staff and the committee to be able to address some of these areas as well. And as Senator Taitague stated, you know, maybe we would look at two different paths, you know, and then we'll race to see who can get there first. Okay? So I appreciate that, and thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll consider Bill 150-38 publicly heard, and thank you for coming down for your testimony, Mr. Glenn Makepeace. We'll go ahead and proceed now on to resolution number. Okay, we're going to take a 1-minute recess just so we can have everyone come in for the resolution. The committee is called back to order now. We'll continue on with the public hearing. And we'll now proceed with hearing testimony on resolution number 94-38 COR. And this is relative to expressing the sense of the MINA'TRENTAI LIHESLATURAN GUÅHAN that the government of Guam, through the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority, prioritize the allocation of community development block grant disaster recovery funds awarded to Guam, and to recommend that no less than 20% of such funds be dedicated to urgent repairs at the Guam Memorial Hospital, Guam Department of Education schools, and village facilities under the purview of the mayors, and to submit this resolution as part of their formal public input process required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Renewal. A resolution that I introduced with my co-sponsor, Senator and Vice Chair of the committee, Chris Dueñas, Senator Vincent, Borja, Sabrina, Salas, Matanane, Lujan, Shelly, Calvo, Shawn, Gumataotao, Telo, Taitague, and William Parkinson. When it comes to discretionary federal funds, the governor of Guam has sole discretion authority to spend those funds. Therefore, this resolution, if adopted by a majority of our members, simply makes a strong statement. This resolution asks the governor to use 20% of the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief Funds for the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, where the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has identified urgent repairs of the roof and building envelope, along with needed upgrades to electrical, HVAC, labor and delivery wards, and safety systems. The Guam Department of Education, where many schools require immediate roof or waiting restrooms and structural repairs, and to ensure student safety and compliance. And also to the village facilities under the purview of the mayors, which really remain heavily utilized, yet underfunded and in need of repairs and modernization to continue serving the vital community hubs. And we just want to get the testimony and input from Guam Housing and Urban Renewal on this resolution, and we can go ahead and call up Senator Stevis, the Deputy Director for Guam Housing and Urban Renewal, for the testimony from GHURA. And welcome to you and your team, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Speaker and members of the committee. Before I get into the written testimony, I would like to add some supplemental oral testimony on the record that's not here. Just to make clear that while there is a lot of flexibility with this grant, it's by far not fully discretionary. And I'd like to highlight the governor at the time, and I say this on the record, was seeking to utilize a significant portion, over $400 million, for the hospital. And the governor herself, as the grantee, recognizes there are strict compliance requirements, and that is not the case, and it hasn't been reflected on the action plan. So it's not a discretionary fund. There is a lot of flexibility provided for the administration of it in terms of what it can use, but it's by far not discretionary in that sense. And so I'll begin my testimony to members of this committee. Hafade, Banana Siduas, Guausi Fernando Esteves, Deputy Director of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority and Grants Manager for the CDBG-DR Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. The Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority is charged with the responsibility of administering $500,825,000 in Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds allocated to Guam by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. GHURA has considered your recommendation with no less than 20% or $100,165,000 be allocated specifically to the Guam Memorial Hospital, GMH, Guam Department of Education, GDOE, and village facilities to meet needs outlined by the legislature, and submits its supplemental testimony. In previous testimony we've provided to the body, I've already cited in that submission the various sections of federal law and regulations by specific requirement, so it's already been made on the record for your consideration. I'm grateful for the opportunity to present supplemental testimony on Resolution 94-38 COR. Public input is an important consideration when informing unmet need. In drafting the action plan, public input informed GHURA of unmet needs, for example, families still needing home repairs in order to move back in, or elderly and disabled persons with disabilities who are physically unable to clear storm debris from their homes. However, public input cannot stand alone. GURA must balance public input against other mandated and critical factors, which I'll elaborate on. With all humility, I must take exception to the oversimplification of what it takes to obligate these funds. Proposing a blind allocation like an appropriation bill misinforms the public in a time when we're conducting outreach to get them to eligibility. With all due respect to this body, HUD has already mandated an overarching spending priority irrespective of the desires of the legislature, a 70% total spend to the benefit of low to moderate income households as a national objective under the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. It's possible the recommendations put forth in this resolution may align with the LMI national objective, but as it stands, it's premature to make eligibility determinations based on HUD's requirements. GURA has proposed in the action plan approved by HUD a submission process for project proposals under the Fix and Six. It's through the eligibility process that GURA evaluates the what in a proposal against varying compliance checks to make an eligibility determination. The outreaches we've begun are meant to prepare applicants for their submissions. These are the questions that will get answered during the submission process. These are questions that get answered during the submission process. These are questions that must get answered before eligibility determinations can be made. These are some of the basic questions that require answers. What is the eligible activity being proposed? What is the proposed national objective being met? What is the unmet need being met, and how will this help address it? What is the direct or indirect tieback to Typhoon Mawar? Mitigation and preventative projects cannot meet this requirement alone. Has the subrecipient exhausted recovery funding means from higher tier sources than CDBG-DR? For example, insurance and FEMA claims, including the filing of all available appeals. What is the capacity for the subrecipient to maintain the facility and its operations in perpetuity? There are currently compliance red flags for facility projects with the Guam Memorial Hospital and Guam Department of Education. Additionally, HUD funding for GovGuam public facilities is conditioned upon the requirement to maintain compliance, which includes the facilities' continued use in an eligible activity and the maintenance of the facility in perpetuity, which means forever. GDOE is currently not in good standing. In 1998, GURA awarded HUD funds for the construction of Head Start classrooms for Estumbo, Carbolito, Machanao, MU Lujan, UPI, CL Taitano, Maleso, and Chief Brody elementary schools. Brody has since been closed, placing GDOE out of compliance. Meanwhile, the legislature and GDOE are considering leasing this facility irrespective of federal compliance requirements. Although new eligible use of those structures is allowable, it will be based on the 2020 census severely limiting options for eligible use. If the Head Start classrooms aren't put back into service within a reasonable time, it will trigger a need to repay back HUD. Red flags for GMH were further raised by a member of this body who stated on the public record on September 26, 2025 at the GMH oversight hearing, quote, "I am here to let you know, and every senator is here to tell you once and for all, you don't have a finance problem. You have an execution problem," end quote, which raises further questions. Does the current facility even need funding? Because senators have stated that they don't. And whether GMH even has the capacity to execute the outcome or compliance requirements that come with HUD funding. These are things that they will have to answer to during the submission process. The current hospital facility is recommended to be replaced by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It is a matter of public record. Regardless of the location of the new hospital, using the example of Chief Brody, what is the intended eligible use of the current facility once a new hospital is built? What assurance can GMH or this body provide that it will properly maintain the facility, a facility that has exceeded its useful life? As a grant manager of CDBG-DR, I have a fiduciary responsibility to both HUD and the government of Guam. I've shared with this body the provisions for repayment to HUD for facilities that are non-compliant, but I'd like to share it on the record and for the public. If CDBG-DR funds are put into the current GMH and it falls out of compliance, even years from now, the repayment will be based on the property value appraised at the highest best use in the present. This means if we put $20 million in there today, the repayment amount will be based on its future value. As much as we'd like to rely on the exemplary and spotless record of the legislature to fully fund the maintenance of government of Guam facilities, and GMH's and GDOE's history of maintenance and grant compliance, GHURA must conduct its due diligence. It is through the submission process and review that we evaluate proposals for eligibility. The organization that will be responsible for operations and compliance must be the organization applying. The organization applying must specify what national objective will be met and how CDBG-DR funding will assist in addressing an unmet need and the national objective. I'd be derelict if I didn't remind this body that this resolution could be deemed by HUD as a violation of the Stafford Act, which prohibits the supplanting of federal funds. It appears as though the legislature, through resolutions 93-38 COR and 94-38 COR, is attempting to fund priorities of the legislature with federal funds to cover the tax cuts that were just passed. In closing, I strongly oppose resolution 94-38 COR. In my professional opinion, it may not be prudent to bind the current GMH facility with CDBG-DR at this time. Options for its use in the future will be severely limited, restricted to uses deemed eligible by HUD, and the costs associated with maintaining a facility past its useful life will be in perpetuity forever. GHURA's plan is to open up submissions for infrastructure and public facilities to all government and nonprofits, a plan we've been consistent on. GMH and GDOE are free to submit project proposals along with everyone else, and their proposals will be screened and graded like everyone else's. Not included in my written testimony, but I'm happy to discuss after, with further consideration, we may have an additional option worth considering that can meet both needs and also reduce the risk associated with funding the aging facility today. I'm happy to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director Fernando Esteves, for your testimony. We're going to go ahead and start with the questions or comments from the panel. And,
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, excuse me. Can we get a copy of that testimony, please? And they can make copies of it, please, so we can have it, and it's easier to ask you questions with that copy in front of us. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before we go ahead and start the question and comment, if you want to go ahead and discuss your alternatives at this point, and that way we just get it all onto the record and at one time.
Yes, thank you. So while we may not be able to, we can grant funds, but again, it comes with a balance of risk and a compliance check. So we have to evaluate their capacity to execute. We have to evaluate, which also includes maintenance, right? We also have to evaluate what it is they're proposing. In the most recent example, when they applied for CDBG entitlement grants, not disaster recovery, even after going through the technical assistance and outreaches, they still put in an application for ineligible activities, right? And so what we want to make sure we're not doing is making a commitment, basically writing a check we can't cash, right? We're not in the business of making promises that we're not in a position to deliver on because they haven't even met the first compliance check yet, which is eligibility. And it's up to them to propose what it is they're trying to do. Now that, regardless of the direction it's gone, is a hard requirement. That's not going to go away, right? What is the national objective? What's the tie back to MAWR? Is the activity itself eligible, amongst other things? Now, the proposal, we could likely provide a loan at no interest as opposed to a grant. The money paid back would come back to the program for use back again with CDBG-DR. So that might be able to provide a cash infusion, and the requirements have a little bit more flexibility because it's a loan versus a grant to the government of Guam. So, if that's satisfied, there's a room there to call it satisfied, so those same binding requirements in perpetuity may not apply. But of course, we need to work through the solution, right? If that's the direction we go, they still need to get through the first phase, which is what is it you want to do? What is the eligible activity? Is this going to meet the requirements? Regardless of whether it's a loan or a grant, they still have to get through that. And we don't have any of that. Truth be told, we couldn't even commit direct funding like that at this point, right? Because we don't have any of those things. And I'm certain the question will come up, well, what's the difference between this and then the proposal in the action plan for the new hospital? The new hospital is just A&E. And even in the action plan, it's subject to the final compliance checks, right? There's no commitment to funding of a facility. So there are different regulatory requirements. This is, A&E is basically paperwork versus putting actual dollars that are now attached to that facility. So that's one thing we're happy to look into, whether a zero interest loan, so there's really no loss and, kind of maximizes because we get to put it back into the pot through program income and reutilize it. That might be a viable option. But again, we have to balance that against all of the other requirements.
Thank you for that. I think that's something that you didn't say previously, right? And now with these alternatives, we'll go ahead and...
Yes, Mr. Vice Speaker. And again, of course we take, even before, right? And we've been here before the legislature just in collaborative talks in a good faith effort. The good faith effort has not been removed. We were very surprised to see the resolution without, any consultation before, but the door is still open, right? Our goal is to find the best solutions that's going to help the most amount of people. We're trying to make these funds stretch and have a positive impact across every part of Guam, to include nonprofit organizations. We're not trying to make this a government of Guam only type deal. But so there may be options that we can avail ourselves of to try to make it fit better, right? And try to align the priorities. But again, at the end of the day, the onus has to be on the organization on applying, because they're the ones that have to meet the compliance requirements. And I feel bad I have to throw GDOE under the bus, but we didn't find out about the non-compliance until it's reported on the news that they're shutting down the school. Right? And these are very real things that happen with grantees that we have, that they go into non-compliance and they're supposed to be telling us, they're supposed to be notifying us, keeping us in communication, right? Most of the time they're very small and then we can work through that, right? But trying to find an eligible use for a facility like the Guam Memorial Hospital, when HUD starts knocking for repayment, is very challenging. And that's a huge concern. We have a hard enough time figuring it out with some of the old buildings that are under these grant requirements. And I think there's going to be a difficult time trying to figure out something with a few buildings in one elementary school, and so we just don't want to repeat this process and have this difficulty, and then it reports a financial burden on the taxpayers in the future.
Thank you for that. We'll go ahead and open up now for the questions or comments from my colleagues, and we'll start out with the Vice Chair of the committee, Senator Dueñas.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony, Senator and Deputy Director. I want to address a few things that you said in your testimony because they attribute to comments that I have made, and I want to clear the record. My testimony and my discussion with Guam Memorial Hospital during the oversight hearing that you mentioned was specific to the electrical panel, and it was specific to the fact that this legislature has appropriated in the last 4 years over $120 million outside of their regular budget to Guam Memorial Hospital. And yet, that electrical panel and its condition has been noted since 2018 and earlier, needing serious repair and upgrade. So obviously that period of time with those millions and millions of dollars provided for that same procurement, and time again, that procurement not going forward. And only now, with GPA taking the lead and executing on the MOU that they have. And I talked to the general manager from GPA the other day at the bucket truck celebration, the hybrid bucket truck. And it was very clear that the issue is vendors don't even want to deal with this issue because they're concerned about payment, they're concerned about the scope of work. And so the failure has been perennial in terms of executing not because of fund shortages. The other issue, and we can get an opinion on this, this legislature is not trying to supplant whatsoever any authority. The reality is that whether it's liked or not in terms of the BPT rollback, the truth is it's a rollback. It was increased from 4 to 5% as a result of the Trump tax cuts, and it was temporary in nature by its implementation to begin with. And so to put it back to 4% is not taking away local resources for intended purposes. It's replacing the tax where it was to begin with. Now I can see if you're saying we're going to 3.5% or 3%, that would make sense. In fact, our bond market, when we go for bonds and the like, that is the guarantee that we will never go below 3%. So I just take a little bit of exception with regard to that. And now, leading to the final discussion on that issue, obviously, as a former senator, you understand policymakers, they'll take a position one way or the other in their determination. We have believed that when we introduced the resolution of the $104 million in terms of ARP as a backstop, we now continue that legal impasse, a legal impasse. And the reality is we accepted the governor's legal testimony on the record from her legal advisors and her letter saying that this issue of the infrastructure is not directly tied to the hospital. It's a collateral benefit, and if the hospital should go forward, then it would, of course, support that infrastructure along with other infrastructure requirements. So we haven't moved on that resolution because we're hoping that there can be a resolution to this impasse of legality. So just wanted to clear all that up before we go where we're going forward. You mentioned in your testimony that you either are aware of or have received the submissions from Guam Memorial Hospital with regard to their requests. Can you discuss that at this time?
Yes, and first I'd like to say thank you for clearing those things up, and I just want to be clear, I didn't speak you by name, but
I know my comments.
Yeah, there's many that can attest. HUD actually, they look at our media. So when it comes to compliance checks, what GHURA will say to them, right, in terms of what's happening on Guam, they'll counter with, yeah, but it's saying this. And these are things we have to answer for. So I'm appreciative you're able to clear some of those things up on the record, right? Because these are things that we're going to have to try to defend when HUD comes knocking, right? We're that go-between. We've been in this position before and have been very successful in staving off the wolves when it comes to these compliance issues, right? Because again, we're part of the government of Guam. This is our community. Now, the proposal is not related to CDBG-DR. These were proposals submitted to our CDBG entitlement grant. And I can say also, because what is on the record in their comments, that there's substantive comments they submitted during the pre-draft and the post-draft have all missed the mark. They're not even close. I can say that they're not even close. And I'll admit this, early on, I did give them, at least 2 times I met with them, right? And I don't want to say I regret it, but I don't know why they think there's an expectation. I've told them, I don't know how many times I have to tell them, we have the outreaches. Here's what you need to get to compliance. Giving, if I have to speak frank here, a sob story is not going to get funding, right? When you outright say, you know, this has always been a problem, and I'm saying you need a Typhoon Mawar direct or indirect impact, and now it's in the action plan, I warned them too. I said, you sure you want to put this on the record? No, we need to show the legislature we're serious about this. Yes, but, so, you know, okay, we conceded. You want this, you want it on the action plan, it's there. So these are the things that HUD will check for compliance when they're asking for these things. So now we're resolved, right? If there was an opportunity to try to carve something out, they had to at least have been 90% there that we can get through the first compliance checks, but they were nowhere close, no matter what we gave them. But we also, you have to understand, Senator, we have to balance. We are the administrator of the grant, right? I can't go to GMH. I'm not going to go to any other organization and say, this is what you have to put in to apply. That's not what we're doing here. right? And we're not going to do it. We can provide guidance. We can give them, show them where the regulations are. We can give simple guide, but ultimately they have to be the ones to propose. See what I mean? Because they're the ones held to the compliance. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And so you now are supporting the other comment that I made in the oversight hearing. It sounds like you don't have an unmet need. It sounds like you're not able to write that need properly to come into compliance for the opportunity. Senator, we talk about things that are being watched on the record. My God, when those nurses and everybody else came down here screaming at us when the first 30 million went to GMH a few years ago, they were talking about the fact that that hospital, they believe, cannot withstand another typhoon of that magnitude. Nurses were telling us that they themselves and other workers were in their generator room holding the door. There's pictures of that. That if that door was breached and that generator was inundated with flooding, that hospital would have went down because it didn't have island power. Patients would have died. I am sure of it. Because you can only bag patients for so long. I'm giving away the fact that my wife is a critical care nurse. I mean, if that doesn't tell you the severity of the impact of Mawar to Guam's only public hospital, I don't know what does. And the inability to do that in a write-up that would be compliant, I'm dumbfounded. Among other things, the sheer flooding in that facility was insane. There are pictures of waterfalls coming down from the 4th floor to the bottom and elevators rendered inoperable because of the electrical situation and everything else associated with that. I just have to say, and if they can't meet the scope and can't meet the write-up and you can't give them a draft and write it for them, I understand all that. But I'll be doggone if I'm not going to stand on my head and try to do anything and everything to at least express in a resolution the fact that this beleaguered hospital, and we asked them on the record, we asked them, please go and seek guidance from GHURA, put in your applications. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I understand, and I hope the housing projects get funded. And I hope affordable housing moves forward. And I hope all the other impacts that are put out here are moved forward. God bless everybody who gets $1 to $100,000 to $1 million of this. God, thank you, Lord. But the fact is, every single person that will live in an affordable home, every single person that will get some benefit from a mayor's office, every single person that's going to live in a more comfortable and resilient situation because of this opportunity of this $500 and some million may have to go to the hospital. So I'll apologize for being on a couple of resolutions that's trying like hell to make sure we don't lose any money and to ensure that we can possibly use it for a purpose which helps our community. Look at the patients, and this is what we get chided for down here every single time. The payer mix of those individuals that goes to GMH. Those are the same people we're going to be helping with the Fix and Six. With affordable housing, being homeless, having everything wiped out. Those are the people that go to GMH. And when they check out, ni un peso at sa inyong posse. These are the same constituents. So I'll take the criticism. I don't mind. But I will say, and I hope to be interviewed by any federal agency that wants to come out and say, well, the legislature said this on the record. Please interview us. So my only question follow-up to that is, since that standard obviously is the right standard and the correct standard, I hate to have to break the news, but I know a lot of nonprofits too that have serious compliance problems. So now that people pay attention to what we say down here and what we do, all those on the Fix and Six that's applying, make sure you're scrubbing your operation right now and ensuring that you've responded to every finding of non-compliance. Because when GURA comes to review your application and they scrutinize your organization to qualify, if you're a contractor that's out there that's going to build affordable housing based on a proposal, you better not have any findings. If you're a nonprofit organization that's providing housing or shelter or any other thing that you're doing to benefit the community, imanopli, make sure tunanas todo ibidamu, because you're going to need that to ensure that you don't get rejected on this basis. So thank you for the opportunity, but I just want to ask you then as well. I see your team here, and I'm glad they're here, and I appreciate every bit of work that all of you do. Please understand that. This is not designed to tell you what to do or to try to direct anything. It's an expression of we all live here. We all need these services. We all rely on these public operations. So for those that you will be going out to, Fernando, is the team then, of course, I'm sure they've banged the drum on this issue with all of those who would be applying, that you need to ensure that, not that you're 100% squeaky clean, whatever else it is, everybody's going to make a mistake. I did a lot of subgranting when I was Department of Youth Affairs to all kinds of organizations. I know nobody's perfect. We're not even perfect. But to know that, you know, whenever those findings do exist, you've gone forward and put the corrective actions in place, and they're such that they can comply. Is that a strong part of what the program is doing when you're going through this process?
Thank you for the question, Senator. And you know, you're actually spot on. And it's not that you have one mistake, you're going to be disqualified. It means it needs to be addressed. There has to be a path forward to corrective action, or from the agency to consider mitigation activities to reduce the risk, right, to be able to issue it, right? We want to get to a yes. The process we're undertaking right now and the outreaches that have been published are to somewhat sort. So we're briefing the various pillars and programs that we have that we're going to be launching near term, right, planning for January right now. Well, actually, we're launched, but taking applications in the January period. We want to tell people like, hey, is this what you're looking to do? You know, here's information. Maybe you're a better fit here. Maybe you're a better fit here. The second part of the outreach is going to be by specific program type. So if you're GMH or GDOE looking for infrastructure public facilities project, you're going to go to those outreaches. Those outreaches are going to involve, if they attend, they're going to be able to sign up for one-on-one technical assistance in a period right now designated 2 weeks before the submission period, 2 weeks into the submission period. So we're going to straddle both sides to give people an opportunity. But they need to come out for this. The time we're taking right now to get the information out this is a learning process. We've seen so many proposals. Most of my team, me of course, I read through every single comment, every single proposal. The weight or merit or how good the idea is not what's going to get somebody across the finish line. That's the main point we want to make. It's how does it meet the eligibility? How does it meet the unmet need? How does it meet HUD's spending priority? And how does it align, right, with the plan? And can you do what you say you're going to do? If we give you this, Can you do what you say you're going to do? Basically, that's what the requirement is. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, absolutely. And so we're happy, again, to take this opportunity to help educate the public as we're doing this. Come to the outreaches. We're putting information out there. We're trying to simplify this as much as possible. We're happy to engage. But under no circumstances will it be weighted based on, you know, how much you pull my heartstrings, because it's not hard to pull my heartstrings. I care for every organization. I think they're all great ideas. There's a lot of people out there who want to do good for the community, but that's not what this is, right? I would like to not make this all doom and gloom, but also provide a positive note on the proactivity of the legislature, of something that's being proposed. We haven't published a rubric yet, right, on how proposals are going to be graded, but one of the factors that's already been on the action plan that will be a critical one is the leveraging of funds, right? A project or proposal that comes that says, hey, for example, I need 10 million, we'll keep on with the GMH example, I need 10 million for these eligible activities related indirectly or directly to Typhoon Mawar, not mitigation projects, because that seems to be the common misconception. That's a separate thing. We need 10 million for this. And oh, by the way, the legislature has appropriated us for specific restricted use, 10 million for this. The weight of that, of leveraging of funds, is going to go up. That means serious business, right? HUD is not carrying all the liability, and HUD and GHURA is not carrying all the liability. HUD and GHURA is not carrying all the weight. Next thing that would help, hey, we're looking for a loan to do these things. For this, right, an upfront loan at no interest, and we have 50%, 40%, the 10 million restricted lockbox from the legislature, even lowers the risk. And so any, you know, compliance issues, this or that might be of concern starts to go down, and it helps get them to a yes, right? This should be grants management or grants writing basics 101. I mean, you get that, Senator. And all we're asking again is, and the reason we're proposing this time and to maintain our plan for the submission period is to allow that time to get applicants ready, right? Emailing us, you know, proposal, dropping things off is not going to get you across. It's not a rush. It's not a timed thing. It's the quality of the proposal in terms of meeting the basic questions, right? And again, things like leveraging of funds or risk are critical factors we have to determine. So I hope that provides some clarity.
It did, and I can tell you, I'm very proud now to have my name on this resolution, because for better or for worse, this legislature is pretty popular. The legislature itself, not, you know, people judge whether the legislature is popular or not, but the YouTube channel gets tons of hits. And so we are doing a public service today by discussing that, because everything you outline, while you can't write a plan for an organization, you certainly did put everything on the table, and that's where I lead to my final question. Because you're exactly right. The bottom line is that shared risk on federal programs is such a absolute plus. Because the bottom line is that, you know, you've got skin in the game. You've got an associated cost, and you've recognized, and the legislatures give you an appropriation that's only for this purpose, which we're doing going forward on several projects. You've probably heard some of the public hearings recently. So just conceptually, I'm not asking you to endorse that. That's not the issue. But I think with the way your testimony was structured, if done right, these organizations could easily meet what this is calling for if they do it correctly and make the case, like you said, not on a sad song, but on a concrete project that meets specifications and that has all the built-in requisite controls. That's not a number that's really out of the ballpark, albeit maybe not a need for a resolution on it. That's subject to anybody's interpretation. But for these large organizations, if they did it right, I don't think that'd be a hard target to hit.
I concur. And that's why, again, we're going through this process, giving them the time necessary because again, no matter how much my heartstrings are pulled or I may personally feel about a project, if they're not prepared and submitting what they're supposed to submit, there's nothing I can do. And I just want to be clear that my objectivity is fair and impartial, right? Meaning I'm not going to go back and give a second chance, right? I mean, there may be second chances because if we're not getting enough eligible applications, we're going to run it again. We're going to run another submission period until we get enough. Because since we're on this educational campaign, I'll just go make it clear. The easiest way to understand this, there are two parts before GHURA can commit funds for HUD. Two parts. First, eligibility. Those questions, those what questions. The second one is feasibility, the how. That's where the environmental assessment comes in, right? That's where the cost reasonableness based on the general scope of work comes in. All of those things are required before we say, yes, here's the money, get it done. There are two ways this could go about. GHURA could do what's called direct implementation, which means, let's say you're asking for, I don't know, repairs to a building, right? And they're proposing, right? They're asking for this. Let's use an example. I'm organization A. I'm asking for a loan. I have these leveraged funds from the legislature. We're looking for a no-interest loan to be able to do this. We have some capacity challenges. We would like GHURA to do it on our behalf. Then GHURA will do it. We'll hire the contractor. We'll do the procurement. We'll do everything. That's how we've been doing it that's why all these things go up that GHURA builds, because it's all in-house. But it has to be the applicant that proposes those things because we have to evaluate it based on what's being asked, right? We have to look at what's being proposed and evaluate it based on the compliance requirements of what is being asked. Now, to be fair, for all potential applicants, if you're like 90% there, if you hit the critical things and you just need minor tweaks, you're 90, 95%, that's where the TA comes in to kind of work with you and get you across the finish line. But if you're like, oh, I don't know what's going on, what should I put? It's not going to happen, right? If you're completely off the mark, and it's a good indicator they likely don't have the capacity to be able to do it. And that's where we encourage them, hey, if you're a small nonprofit, partner with somebody else, right? If you're a nonprofit, partner with the agency, a government of Guam agency of jurisdiction. So this is what the outreaches are meant for, Senator. That's why we just want to make it clear. We've planned these things out. This is what we're looking to do. We want everybody to have an equal opportunity or equitable opportunity to get to a yes. So thank you.
See, this is Mossy, and I'm just going to close with this. Man, I see one of my relatives in the crowd here, so she'll understand why I'm saying this. My Uncle Barney, Bernabe, he used to always say when things start coming together, now we're cooking with gas. Now we're cooking with gas. I want to ask GMH to watch this hearing because the truth is that in the last 2-3 bills that we heard several days ago, this was the first time I think most of the senators sitting here saw an actual presentation in 2 formats where all of their projects were listed, the amounts were listed, what was going to be done with the money. It was clean as I've seen anything put in front of our face. A flow chart, everything else. So this makes so much sense because they already have and they're going to have additional legislative appropriations. And what I was stating on the record during that time is it's not normal to have big CIPs in a budget package because the budget package is traditionally used for fixed costs. So your exact discussion is perfect under the loan scenario because that's what we want. We want to have the debt service carried out and zero interest. How can you go wrong? So if they qualified for that and leveraged the resource, had the appropriation, they can amortize it and they don't need 50, 60, 70 million in one shot for an appropriation. They can nail that down with the projects and we'll be appropriating for them every year to be able to do the debt service.
When it comes to a loan, right, the proceeds from the loan return becomes program income. It goes into a revolving fund. This is by design, and it's not subject to the deadline. We have a March 20, fixed in 6. There's an end date on when we can expend. Program income is not subject to the deadline. As long as that revolving fund keeps getting recharged, we can keep spending it, right? Again, so this is what we were looking, developing the revolving fund for the ADU loan program, right? So the precedent exists. We weren't necessarily considering this, but again, it's not necessarily we're going to look for the solution to propose to any agency. What we're asking is get through, or agency or nonprofit, get to your proposal, get the base questions out, then we can try to figure out what, if there's tweaking or a solution that will best fit based on what you're asking for, right? We just never, we're nowhere close. I'm not saying they can't get there. They do have talented people over there, but not today. And that's, unfortunately, right? It's not today.
If I was listening down in the front office, I'd send a few people over there that know exactly how to do this, because in closing, and thank you for your expertise and your work on this, because you're absolutely right. Here we have an opportunity to leverage federal money that gets replenished back into our system, not going out and taking a loan amortization for a company, people who sell bonds who's going to make money on it, to take money for their company. But because this is a purpose for our people and for the needs going forward, every time that repayment goes into that zero interest loan, it creates another bag of money to go back out and help our people. I can't see a bigger win-win-win scenario than that. So like I said, I'm going to encourage those that I know, because you and I both know a lot of these same people that are very talented in our government, just put them on loan to these organizations and say, hey, here's an opportunity for all of us can benefit from this. And man, we're not paying this loan to a bank or to and making people that float bonds rich. We're actually doing it internally, and the money's replenishing for all the programs that we administer. Susmasi, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity and the latitude you've given me.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Senator Terlahi, you have any questions, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I'm trying to go back and forth between the two. There's one submitted earlier, as you said, in writing, and then the one you did today. Just a couple quick questions. So you said that the proposal recommends $100 million be allocated under urgent need, removing the ability to count expenditures towards a 70% LMI requirement, greatly increasing the risk of GHURA being unable to meet key grant objective.
Correct.
But didn't you also say somewhere else that they could actually be meeting LMI requirement in these projects as well?
Yes, and that's part of the application process. If they come in and say, hey, GHURA,
yes,
here's our application, we're looking to do urgent need. Okay, we evaluate that. If they come in and say, hey, we're trying to do this under LMI, then we have to calculate how much of this counts towards the LMI. But none of that starts till there's the proposal on what the national objective is.
So it's possible, and it's possible that these projects are going to fit under your infrastructure program 1, program 2, and program 3?
I believe there's a project under there should be 2, right, that they could avail funds of. There's the local cost share for the FEMA PA. That's for all obligated
That's program
PAs.
1.
There's program 2, which is the HMGP, the hazard mitigation grant program. We're doing local cost share for that, and I think there's a project being pushed for that for GMH for the generators, separate program. And then there's the public facilities itself. Now, I'd like to remind you, the dollar amounts in those programs are subject to change, not necessarily lower, potentially higher, right? As we go through the grant and things are moving or not moving and projects are coming to fruition, those amounts can go up, right? There could be additional funding, there could be another round, right? Going to the next set of eligible activities going on there. This is meant to be an iterative process. We have to keep reevaluating this. So this is just a starting point.
The difference is that if you add all 3 programs, your allocation so far is only about $48 million.
Correct.
And this resolution is asking for at least $100 million towards these projects. So they would have to win all of the funding in the 3 programs to even get $48 million, you're saying. But yet, you were able to allocate 60 million to a very specific project, no competition, no nothing is required, not even looks like any more detailed submission for the A&E for the new hospital. And you're telling us that you can't assist these agencies like the existing hospital in its submission. You can't assist GDOE by telling them they're out of compliance in a timely manner so they don't put themselves out of compliance, or I can't see why GDOE's projects are not going to fit into these, but it looks like you're going to put it out on a competition between GDOE and other nonprofits and everybody else, but they'll never get up to this amount of even 100 million out of the 500 million.
Well, the 100 million's kind of like a blind appropriation. Where does it come from? It's a guessing game. You know, I don't know. And that's why we have to base it on the proposal, what's being asked for. So the 20 million is I mean, you know, it's not meant to be offensive as far as I'm concerned. It's not backed by anything, right? The 20%, right? It's a blind number. The 60 million is not a blind number, and as I've already stated, it's a very different project. There's a difference between a facilities project with money going into a facility, which has different requirements, than an exercise of design. Design is an activity itself, but it's clean, right? There's no compliance issues with that.
I understand the compliance about the future use of the building, right? That's the biggest compliance issue we're looking at, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you wrote the specifics out for that project, for the 60 million for the new hospital A&E, you also said, you cited that existing conditions pose a serious and immediate threat to the health and welfare of the community. Conditions have become recently urgent. That you're talking about conditions in the current hospital. So, again, if they can overcome that hurdle of what is the future use of the building, they have potential to meet requirements of this project.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, and again, it's up to them. If they want to, you know, we're speaking about them and they're not here, right? I do take some issue with that, right? But you're asking, and I'm going to say it. If they want to put it under urgent use, I've made it clear, urgent use is not a priority, or urgent need is not the priority for the grant. Unless they can express people are going to die tomorrow, maybe we'll consider it, because once we start putting things towards urgent need, the amount is going to require a rework of the calculation. That's a carefully balanced amount to make sure we hit the 70%. So I'm not just going to say, oh, okay, just go 30 million with urgent need now, because then I'm going to have to start making adjustments everywhere else. It's going to require a substantial amendment of the whole plan. That means we have to have confidence that we're going to get the 70%, because you can't have urgent need and LMI, right? The funding has to be either or, one of the national objectives. So if they say, hey, we really need this, we don't want to calculate the LMI, this is critical, urgent need, it's possible, sure. But I have to compare that with the other requirements.
And you put the A&E under urgent need, though?
No, as an option. It's not finalized, right?
It says,
urgent need or LMI. There's an LMI there because it's going to depend on the calculation. That's why there's a note there that says subject to the final determination. That funding is not locked in. Nobody's going to be able to tap into that 60 million until the requirements are met. But it's low risk enough and it's clean. It's clean because there is no design.
I know. Well,
it doesn't exist.
My point is that the governor was very publicly asking and demanding 400 million of the 500 million, and you helped her to get down to 60 million pretty much concrete for A&E.
No, that's not accurate,
But we're
Senator.
not able to
She
help
asked for construction
GMH
costs.
to get
No
money
A&E
for
costs
the
400 million. She asked for construction money for the hospital.
That's
I didn't
correct.
help her to get to that. I gave her to, there's an eligible activity. But mind you, the governor is the grantee for the territory, right? And I want to make that distinction.
So the governor can help the agencies and help you to help the
What
agencies.
agency,
but you,
Governor? That doesn't help an agency. That helps the territory of Guam to get a new hospital we need. Yeah, because nothing's moving.
I don't necessarily see this distinction that you're making between the governor and the hospital. If you read the Organic Act, she's the one in charge of the hospital as well as being the grantee. She does multiple roles, right? All right. What about this on the earlier letter when you said, when drafting the action plan, it was discovered that the non-federal match was not funded by the legislature and appropriated to other priorities at their discretion?
Yeah, at the time, there wasn't money committed to non-federal matches. That's why we
I
had
don't
to
remember
put it.
any request for this in any of the governor's submission of a budget either.
But that's not my business. I'm just saying factually there was not money appropriated to the non-federal match, unmet need.
And we need that for your 2.5 in non-federal matching funds for eligible project?
Yeah, if they get through the eligibility requirements, yes. Because that's a multiplier. I mean, we should prioritize that, right? Yeah.
So how would the governor know to put that in her?
She did. Put what in where?
Huh?
Put what in where?
I'm telling you said
the governor
it's not
didn't
your
write this. Governor, I mean, Senator, I wrote this.
She put it into her budget request, and
I have no idea about her budget request. We're autonomous. We're not in the budget. I have no clue.
But you're saying the government has to fund this. That's how we do that, right?
Have to fund what?
This match.
Yes, to local, non-local cost share, and it includes nonprofit organizations.
The legislature was not funded by the legislature and appropriated.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking, it's not funded because I've never seen any request for it or anything in even the governor's budget.
But that's not my business. I mean, that's you guys.
I'm just pointing that out to you. If you want to help
that's your
the people
job.
of
I'm just.
Guam, yes, we need to know these things, right? When we're doing a budget.
It's not my job to notify you of those things. I'm covering the gap that was left, Senator. That's where I'm coming from. There are gaps left in there, and our job is to come in and pick up these pieces. There's no movement on the new hospital, which everyone agrees there's a new hospital. There's objective data.
What pieces on the federal match? I'm not understanding. You said when drafting the action plan, this is a brand new action plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you said this 2.5 FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, you intend to fund 2.5 in non-federal matching funds. The allocation to fund approximately 5.5 million in non-federal match requires both an eligible activity and necessary to speed recovery, right? So it would help if somebody knew about it, right?
Well, I mean, I can't account for people's competence. I know about it. I'm doing my job, okay?
Okay.
It's not hard to understand what happens in a disaster. I can tell you right now, when a disaster hits, I look through every single thing. I did my job, right? And respective, if there's funding needed for the territory, somebody should be reading what funding is necessary, not having to be told. I don't wait to be told what I need to know or should know based on the roles and responsibilities inherent in my position. So I don't know. I'm not going to be held to account what you're told, what the legislature's told.
You're saying the legislature didn't fund it?
They didn't. That's factual.
We don't handle the federal grants.
No,
right?
Senator, the non-federal match has to come from the territory. Yes, that you handle.
For particular grants, right?
No, for FEMA PA, which is for every single disaster that happens. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
It's pretty common.
And then you talk about the subjects to requirements in perpetuity. I understand that.
Yep.
In your next letter, you talked about that had been violated by GDOE when they closed down Chief Brody. Did you inform them of that, or
We're working on the compliance letter. We're busy.
You're going to tell them they're in violation?
I mean, I've told them verbally, but we have to form the formal letter of notice of violation that starts that process.
Well,
but they've been informed. I
think we also had a hearing on the bill to allow DOE to lease out its properties.
Yeah,
but I don't remember anyone raising any.
Yeah, correct. And that's where we talk about compliance. It's the responsibility of the person benefiting, gaining the award, gaining the assistance to notify. It's in every subrecipient agreement. Right?
I'm sure technically, yes, it's somebody's responsibility. Those people who signed all those documents are probably not even in DOE anymore, I bet, because when Chief Brody Head Start was built, that was probably years ago, before your time, my time, and anybody who's there right now's time. So all I'm saying is, if you're aware of it, I can't see how it's hurts to inform them. But if you said you did inform them, then thank you for that, because they did not inform us that they were informed by GURA of any potential violation.
Yes, and that's why we have a concern with what could happen, is because what we're seeing right now,
yes,
right?
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
And then you talked about the supplanting. Okay, in both letters you talk about this supplanting of federal funds. GMH and GMH and GDOE have stated that tax cuts ratified by this legislature may result in diminished operations and maintenance activities. This resolution, which may be forwarded to HUD, seeks specific allocations for GMH and GDOE on the eve of tax cuts, which could be perceived by HUD as supplanting of funds in violation of the Stafford Act.
Correct.
This, you're saying supplanting of federal funds is prohibited.
Yes. So disaster recovery funds are meant to supplement. The federal government has determined, based on verbiage, the opposite of supplement is supplant. So supplanting is the antithesis of supplement, right? So it's prohibited, yeah. And we've received that in our training as well. So the concern is also kind of goes back to the compliance thing. If we're going to commit funds to GDOE and GDOE is saying, hey, we're going to have to close down schools, how can I commit funds knowing you're going to close down schools? What schools are you going to close down? What schools are you applying for funding for? So, it's a little backwards.
I understand that we don't want to say it's kind of like we were in this situation with the ARP funds, that we couldn't fund tax breaks with the ARP funds.
The same
So
standard.
we don't want to fund tax breaks with this. However, for GMH and GDOE, I don't believe we went down in our appropriations that in this fiscal year. I mean, I don't know, but I understand your concern. I'm just also concerned because I think we went up for GMH and GDOE. So in addition to increasing our funding for those entities, we still need.
Yeah, and remember the timing of it. When the resolution first came out, I don't think they had been the 40 million, right? But again, I never said absolutely, I just said be mindful, right? Again, I have a fiduciary responsibility. I don't want to say, hey, well, you're supposed to know, Fernando, but you didn't tell anybody. The same way,
I'm not saying that it was your job. I'm just asking why wouldn't you? Because it seems we're all in one government and we are all in this together, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay, in your alternatives at the end, when you discussed the loan, was there a second alternative?
I mean, because of the compliance flags, right? And we, as you say, there's things we know, and there's comments that we've made. There's many things on the record. Because we know it's a lot of it is about the risk, right? There's a risk component associated with this. So yes, of course, we could outright grant the funds. Should they get through all the eligibility things, but they're going to be up against, maybe another program that says, hey, we have 20 million, I just need 5 million. And you're going to get a $25 million product, right, for this investment. That's going to weight higher for certain, right? The leverage of funding really comes into play because they're multipliers, right? Invest a little, get more. Invest a little, get more. That's going to help stretch out the benefit to the public. So I can't say, yes, it's an option, they could get the grant, but all those things get weighed when they submit the proposal.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you doing the work on this project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. Senator Gumataotao, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Deputy Director, when was your, I just looked at the website, it shows draft plan. When was you mentioned in your letter, when did HUD approve this plan? What's the date?
Say, Alicia, a month ago? September? It was September. It was the verbal. It was before the shutdown. They said they told us we have a standing meetings with them until the shutdown.
No. Let me ask again. So you have no written approval of your plan? Well, okay, so what was the date?
August what? August 28th.
August 28th. So because it says draft on your website. So
Correct.
The final plan has been approved by HUD? Okay.
We're waiting for the letter. The shutdowns kind of slowed that down, but it's coming.
Okay, I understand those other parts of it. So that must have meant that they reviewed and approved your action plan in August.
Yes, with some minor adjustments, and that'll get put on the website.
Because I'm trying to understand, because this letter and this conversation is, I just want to make sure I'm not in the wrong place. So you're implementing and the activities and drawing down funds as soon as you get written approval, because an email is not going to be enough for this, right?
Correct. No, there's no drawing of funds except for admin at this time. We're in phase 2.
Why I'm asking is because I'll just refer to HUD. Citizen participation is both encouraged and required throughout the CDBG-DR grant process. I appreciate your candor in your letter to us. Obviously, as Senator Dueñas mentioned, this resolution is our expression. I noticed that in the draft plan, we are number 1 in terms of your public and civic engagement. I was here with you, and I recall that. I do not think that we'll be number 41 at the bottom of that list, because GMH was number 39 in their request to you. So I guess why I'm asking, Mr. Chair, as we're looking at this, I know that you had made a mention publicly in your comments back, or at least in the receiving of these comments from GHURA, that you do have we're looking to do a planned oversight hearing on the implementation of the CDBG-DR. I say that as, I mean, I'm not going to, don't want to spend that much more time, because I know that at least I appreciated your input today, and I think that part of when we started this was not going to be a process that was going to take, you said at some point, I believe it was almost 18 months to 2 years. It's fascinating that we are now in August and there's a final plan approval for this. I mean, unless something was so miraculous in your plan and the community engagement, that's great. That I'm not going to argue. I think that you've presented to us kind of the details, and I don't need to go into more detail about what you just spent nearly 35 minutes talking about. Mr. Chair, I do believe, and I would stand with you, in terms of the oversight, at least an oversight hearing into the plan, because I am very curious after this, because this action plan, if it's set forward, I think it's going to need to have a more collaborative process between the executive branch and how they work with their grantor or the agencies below them on this. But again, thank you for the date and the time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gumataotao. Thank you, Senator Esteves, Deputy Director, for your testimony today. And again, this resolution is just speaking of the Guam legislature's position in looking at what we can do to appropriate, or not, let me say that, or not appropriate, but recommend where the priorities for this community development block grant disaster recovery funds, and hoping that consideration will be taken. And we know that our resolution perhaps has no power and effect for what is determined by the federal government or by the GHURA. So we just hope that there would be some type of middle road that we can address both issues. And it's very important that we address the community issues with those that lost housing or and those other issues, but also the hospitals where everyone goes, the schools where all our children attend. So where that medium would be, we'll continue to work on it. But again, thank you for you and your team to come down and make your testimony, and hopefully we'll be able to come out with this. But thank you for coming down again, Director Esteves, and there'll be no further comments or questions to today's public hearing. The committee will accept written statements on today's hearing within 7 days and can be mailed to my office on the second floor of the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalang Santo Papa in Aganya. You may also send your statements to us at Vice Speaker Toniata at guamlegislature.gov. Thank you for your participation. This public hearing is now adjourned, and the time is 11:44. Thank you, Senator Chalai, for being here. Thank you, everyone.